Chapter 1424. Wang Ling was very satisfied with Lang Ming's performance in the first battle. Although Lang Ming's learning ability couldn't catch up with Wang Ling's, he had passed. According to the 100-point system, the normal passing line was 60 points. But in Wang Ling's heart, 95 was a passing mark. 96 to 98 was average. 99 to 100 was outstanding. Wang Ling's preliminary assessment of Lang Ming's learning ability was 95. That was enough. Because Lang Ming was still young, there was still room for him to grow. At that moment, Wang Ying turned into a black shadow and slipped through the crack in the door. Then, visible to the naked eye, the black shadow gradually took on a human form and coalesced into Wang Ying's triumphant face. He whistled with a satisfied expression on his face. It would be perfect if he had a cigarette at a time like this. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Shadow Dao was really a miraculous thing. It was clearly a power born in his body, but its personality was too different from his own. When Wang Ling had seen Wang Ying gagging Sun Yinger at the door just now, his mind had instantly gone blank. His first reaction was, "Isn't Wang Ying afraid that I'll suck out Sun Yinger's tongue?" But in any case, the scene in front of him was still beyond Wang Ling's understanding. Shadows actually had no actual age. In theory, they weren't people. But Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's shadows could mix. This was something Wang Ling hadn't expected. "Don't worry, Ling Master, I've already planted a seed in him," Wang Ying said at that moment. Wang Ling knew what this seed referred to. But for some reason, when these words came out of Wang Ying's mouth, they sounded different. This was a defense seed that could be triggered in a moment of crisis. It was Wang Ling who had ordered Wang Ying to set it up. Generally speaking, you just needed to carve the defense seed's magic seal on your palm and then lightly pat it like a stamp. Who knew that Wang Ying would directly choose to gaggle Sun Yinger? Such a method could be said to be ingenious. "Sword Master is here. What are you worried about?" To be honest, Jinka himself was very surprised that Wang Ling was personally standing guard at Sword King World this time. Naturally, Wang Ling had his reasons for being here in person. Wang Ling had predicted yesterday that there would be unforeseen events at the Sword Dao conference. "There's an enemy attack." Wang Ying answered Jinka's question. "Also, the other party is from outside the Milky Way." Infinite galaxy? Jinka instantly thought of this mysterious universe. The vastness of the endless Milky Way was far beyond the reach of the outer realm Milky Way. Back then, in search of Drought Star, immortal Jin Yuan had roamed the Milky Way outside the Milky Way for 1,000 years, but hadn't been able to finish it. If he went to the endless Milky Way, with his immortal venerable realm, he might not be able to reach the end even if he walked for 1,000,000,000 years. "What's your goal?" Jinka asked again. This was the first time in history that an enemy from the infinite galaxy had appeared. It was precisely because he didn't understand the enemy that he felt uneasy. If it wasn't for the power of deduction which had given him this new term, he really wouldn't have known that there was actually another layer beyond the Milky Way. Was it really a cosmic nesting doll? He didn't know much about the infinite galaxy, and he didn't know what level the enemies from there were at. What if the other party was stronger than him? Wang Ling knew he was very strong. However, he had always understood the principle that there was always a higher mountain. Because of this, he had always been humble. He might turn the 6 great heavenly Daos into gems and embed them into a glove to snap his fingers. "The universe will be destroyed," Wang Ying said with a horrified expression. "This." Jinka was horrified, and almost took it seriously. Just as he was about to ask a question, Wang Ying continued, "He's probably here for Lang Ming." "Lang Ming, is that so?" Jinka nodded to himself. This was a more reasonable answer. Lang Ming was transformed from heavenly tomb grass. What kind of place was the heavenly tomb? Rumor had it that it was a cosmic tomb that Dao ancestor Wang had built for himself. Buried in this tomb were all the treasures that Dao ancestor Wang had accumulated throughout his life. He clearly wasn't dead, but wanted to build a tomb for himself first. This was the standard thinking of a big shot. Rumor had it that Dao ancestor Wang had built the heavenly tomb when he was middle-aged. He had thought that his time was coming, so he had built the tomb ahead of time. In the end, even Dao ancestor Wang himself hadn't expected that he could be reincarnated. This had directly led to this heavenly tomb that he had built, and to this day, no one had moved in. The location of the heavenly tomb is very vague, and we don't know its exact location yet. It could be outside the Milky Way, or it could be in the infinite galaxy. Wang Ying said. Lang Ming was transformed from heavenly tomb grass. When Dao ancestor Wang came to Sword King world back then, it was a withered grass that stuck to the soles of his feet. Who would have thought that after the baptism of time, the withered grass would come to life again, and in the end, it would successfully give birth to Lang Ming in Sword King world. At this point, Jinka actually already had a general idea. This enemy from the infinite galaxy was looking for Lang Ming, and their ultimate goal was the heavenly tomb, in order to obtain Dao ancestor Wang's treasure. So, the reason why you came here in person is because, you're right. Wang Ying knew what Jinka was thinking, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. My thoughts on this point are the same as Lord Jinka's. We've never come into contact with an enemy from the infinite galaxy before. If we underestimate them, we might cause an unimaginable disaster. The first match is Lang Ming's. The people from the infinite galaxy haven't made a move yet. Commander feels that the other party will most likely show up when Miss Sun goes on stage, so he had me set up defensive seeds in advance. That is to say, this time, Commander and I will do our best to deal with this enemy from the outer realm, Wang Ying said. Jinka was silent 3 times. Looking at this situation, he felt that he might witness history. If they went all out, didn't that mean that the Dao talisman seal would be completely removed? Of course, Jinka also felt Wang Ling and Wang Ying. He was thinking too much. His understanding of the infinite galaxy was limited. But Jinka felt that he still had some understanding of Wang Ling. No matter what the background of this enemy from the infinite galaxy was, even if you didn't remove the talisman seal, the other party would still die. Wang Ling. This was the man whom Wang Ling had fallen in love with at first glance. Jinka felt that he had good taste. Elsewhere, in Lotus Sun's heavenly room, as Wang Ying had expected, Sun Yinger had completely shut herself off. Don't cry, Ying. President Ying probably didn't do it on purpose. Lotus Sun tried to comfort her. You're still speaking up for him. Sun Yinger cried even harder. She touched her belly and tried to calm down. If he kissed me, then so be it. Why did he blow air into my mouth? Lotus Sun stared at Sun Yinger's big belly and really didn't know what to say. She had actually been kissed by President Ying. For some reason, Lotus Sun felt a little sour in her mouth. Chapter 1425. At the same time that the Sword Dao meet was being held in the Sword King realm, the core members of the Battle Sect's perfected Venerate Hall were also watching the grand competition through remote surveillance. Tyrant was meditating at the front. He used the symbol to penetrate his ocular power into the blade storm of the Sword King realm and saw the battle that was happening inside. Then, the images were transmitted back through the eye power. Then, it was projected by the ring scar on the monk's head, forming a projection in the void. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal exclaimed in his heart at this scene. As expected of Senior Golden Lamp. Besides emitting smoke to cook hot pot, this ring scar actually has this function. It's just some insignificant tricks. Tyrant smiled modestly as usual. He was also paying special attention to the Sword Dao meet, but his focus was not on Lotus Sunday. At the Sword Dao meet, in the monk's eyes, it was a foregone conclusion that the girl would win the championship. And the key point was still the unknown enemy from the infinite galaxy. When Wang Ling had deduced this last night, all the core members of Battle Sect had already known about it. Of course, Lotus Sun didn't know that. That was Tyrant's suggestion so that she could be at ease and focus on the match before her. As for the matter of protecting Earth, it would be left to this group of men to handle. Now that Wang Ling was in Sword King world, the monk was Earth's last line of defense. Although the ultimate goal of the unknown opponent from the endless Milky Way was the Sword King realm, they still had to be on guard. What's Infinite Galaxy's opponent like? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. After getting to know Wang Ling, he realized that all the cultivation knowledge he had accumulated was of no use at all. Because of Wang Ling, he had gotten to know even more almighty seniors who were hiding among the cultivators. Because of Wang Ling, his understanding of the map view had also been completely expanded. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly realized that he had a lot of blind spots in his knowledge. And Wang Ling played the role of constantly breaking through his blind spots. Not only did it allow him to come into contact with a higher level of knowledge, but it also allowed him to rub his current understanding of cultivation knowledge against the ground. The infinite galaxy is too far away, so this penniless monk doesn't go there often. Every time before we go, we have to prepare a large amount of resources in advance in case of emergency, said the monk. He pinched his fingers together and calculated. If he were to travel to the infinite Milky Way, it would take about half a year. Wang Ling aside, given his realm, it would take him half a year. It was impossible for anyone else to get there without the help of external forces. Rumor has it that the heavenly tomb that Tao ancestor Wang established is in this boundless galaxy. This penniless monk went there more than 76,000 times. Hearing this, everyone's mouth twitched. He had been there more than 76,000 times. And the monk actually called this not much? However, with Tyrant's experience of nearly 4,000 reincarnations, perhaps the number of trips to the infinite galaxy was not that rare. The infinite Milky Way is too vast. Even a small space there is bigger than the Milky Way. The monk lamented, although this poor monk has worked many times, the exploration rate of the infinite galaxy is less than 0.1%. Senior, did you not discover any signs of living beings? At least, I haven't found anything in the many times I've explored. The monk said. Because of this poor monk was also very surprised when Ling Zhenren suddenly said that there was an unknown opponent from the infinite galaxy. So we can only wait now? Ling Zhenren and I originally deduced that their target was Lang Ming. But Lang Ming's battle is already over, and the other party still hasn't made a move. Is it for Miss Lotus Sun? Or rather, both Lang Ming and Miss Sun are targets. The monk lowered his eyes and said thoughtfully, let's watch them make a move. After they fight, we'll know their true combat strength. Saying that, everyone turned their attention back to the Sword Dao competition. The competition for the King's group was about to begin. Lotus Sun, the #1 foundation establishment cultivator on Earth, was about to take the stage. When she walked into the periphery of the sword arena, the ruckus in the arena reverberated in her ears. Her expression, however, was much calmer than she had imagined. The strands of sword chi that flowed through the surroundings were all probing her cultivation. Many sword spirits had question marks on their faces. Human? Why can a human at the foundation establishment stage also participate in the Sword Dao competition? Haven't you noticed yet? This human has become one with her sword. A sword spirit with outstanding eyesight explained. Lotus Sun's passive version of becoming one with her sword made her and the spirit sword indistinguishable. Although her realm was still at the foundation establishment realm, the overall increase in combat strength was very considerable. The 50 people at the east entrance, please line up in an orderly manner. We're ready to enter, said a royal sword god at the front of the line. Lotus Sun was at the end of the line at the east entrance. In the past, Lotus Sun would definitely be the first to be in the limelight. But now, she had indeed changed a lot. On the other hand, that was also Lotus Sun's own thoughts. After all, the Sword King realm was the world of sword spirits, and it did not seem reasonable for a human like her to participate in the Sword Dao competition. Long before the start of the competition, everyone had been quite critical of the human's participation in the Sword Dao competition. Although Mysterious Sea had a high ranking on the Sword Dao ranking, many sword spirits didn't like him even though he had made a comeback due to his hybrid quality. This time, Lotus Sun chose to participate in the Sword Dao competition because she wanted to win the Sword God alloy and choose a suitable sword spirit for An Wan. On the other hand, it was also for Mysterious Sea's sake. The Sword King realm was Mysterious Sea's hometown. Lotus Sun didn't want Mysterious Sea to still be looked down upon and discriminated against after returning to his hometown. She wanted to bring Mysterious Sea along and tell all the sword spirits in the Sword King realm that Mysterious Sea was not a useless inferior spirit sword. Even if he came from a poor background, he could still make a comeback. Even if he was lucky, so what? Luck was also a part of one's strength. When the gate of the east entrance slowly opened, Lotus Sun was wearing a dark blue Taoist dress and holding Mysterious Sea with her head held high. This Taoist dress was the +0 world-defying Taoist dress that Awan had given her previously, and it had now become her combat suit. She followed at the back of the line and walked out against the light. With the appearance of the only human girl, the sword arena was in an uproar again. Although there were many sword spirits watching, not many of them had actually seen Lotus Sun before. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the girl received all kinds of scorching gazes, and she began to feel the pressure that Lang Ming was carrying before the start of the competition. Interesting, a human girl actually brought her inferior sword to participate in the competition. She really dared to come. She's quite cute. She's my type. But does anyone know why that inferior sword in her hand is ranked 7th on the sword rankings? Who knows? Maybe it's just because her skin looks better? Up until now, the rhythm of Lotus Sun's participation in the competition had never stopped in the Sword King realm. In fact, even Nine Nether hadn't expected the sword spirits of the Sword King realm to be so exclusive. Girl, aren't you going to release your sword chi? Let us see how powerful this inferior sword ranked 7th on the sword rankings is. A meddlesome sword spirit shouted loudly in the spectator stands, immediately causing another storm. Lotus Sun closed her eyes slightly and took a deep breath, doing her best to calm herself down. Then, she used her slender and fair fingers to touch the scabbard and drew the sword inch by inch in the face of the clamor around her. As you wish. The next moment, the girl opened her beautiful eyes. But she had only drawn out less than 3 centimeters of the sword when Mysterious Sea's sword chi, like a raging sea, surged out from the gap and swept through the field like a tsunami. In the field, all the sword spirits were horrified. This powerful sword chi overflowed and surged in the field, causing illusions to appear in their eyes. The sword battle arena in front of them had suddenly turned into a vast ocean right before their eyes. And in the sea, everywhere was water. Chapter 14:26. Lotus Sun's current strength was incomparable to before. When this aura was released, the hem of her skirt billowed along with the sword chi. The blue skirt billowed like ocean waves. The sword spirits in the stands were all horrified by this powerful sword chi. They couldn't imagine that an inferior spirit sword could burst forth with such power. Most people were frightened by this sword chi. But on such an occasion, it was inevitable that some old gentleman would appear. Go up. Go up a little more. Yes, we're almost there. Some sword spirits stared at the girl's blue skirt, wanting to catch a glimpse of the scenery below. Earlier, they had deliberately followed the crowd to provoke Lotus Sunday. Their goal was to provoke this human girl's anger. Because sword chi basically went up from below. Once it erupted, it was very easy for it to be exposed. However, the result was a huge disappointment to the old gentleman among the sword spirits. Because just as the hem of her skirt was about to be blown up, the anti-gravity mode of Lotus Sun's skirt had been activated. It could only be said that this was the skirt Awan had given her. Anti-gravity mode was very practical for every girl. In the arena, the anti-gravity blue skirt swayed wildly but didn't get blown up. Lotus Sun slowly pulled Mysterious Sea's sword out of its scabbard. With every inch it was pulled out, the raging and roaring sword chi in the arena surged a little more. When the sword was completely pulled out, the passive version of One with the Sword was fully activated. After a flash of light and shadow, Lotus Sun and Mysterious Sea's figures had completely fused into one. The girl's blue eyes were even deeper than before, as if there were stars in them, emitting a beautiful and moving luster. Mysterious Sea's dark blue evening dress also fused perfectly with them. There were many more ripples symbolizing the sea on the hem of the skirt, making it look even more magnificent than before. Even the color of her hair had changed. After becoming one with the sword, it was dyed Mysterious Sea's silver-gray color. Of course, none of this was important. The key was, the girl found that her chest seemed to have become a lot heavier. The monk had warned her that she had to be extra careful when using Mysterious Sea on Earth, so she didn't need to unsheath it unless it was absolutely necessary. After fusing with 3 heavenly Tao magic cubes, the newly upgraded passive version of One with the Sword had to be completely unsheathed in order to display this kind of fusion mode. So this was the first time Lotus Sun had experienced such a fusion. In the heavenly guest room, Sun Yinger was so excited that she spoke incoherently. Rong Rong, you've grown up. That's great. If Rong Rong can grow, then so can I. In the future, we will be able to realize the airbag cushioning plan. Loopy Toad opened its mouth, but in the end didn't say anything. It didn't know where Sun Yinger had inherited the label of an experienced driver. She really could open up any kind of broken road for her. On the other side, in the sword battle arena, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian, who were also participating in this competition, were deeply impressed by the sword chi released by Mysterious Sea. As expected of Miss Lotus Sunday, the two sighed inwardly. Of course, they weren't participating in the competition to win the championship, but to ensure Lotus Sun's safety. Thus, when they entered, Wu Jin and Old Barbarian were both thinking about how they could showcase their outstanding acting skills. However, what surprised everyone was that when the King Group competition began, Not a single sword spirit took the initiative to attack the other sword spirits. This was the difference in battle tactics between the sword spirits of the King group and the Bronze group. This was also one of the reasons why the Bronze group wasn't as good as the King group. Especially in this kind of chaotic battle, the one who took the initiative to attack would definitely be the one at a disadvantage. Large-scale attacks would only be met with even fiercer focus fire, and they would be the first to be eliminated. So the sword spirits of the King group had the same idea before the competition began. And that was to take the initiative to form alliances. Eliminate the other sword spirits of the King group first. As for how to choose an ally, for the sword spirits of the King group, this wasn't something they needed to think about at all. Factions could be easily divided according to the material of the sword or the type of the sword. Thus, when the King group competition began, the entire sword battle arena was enigmatically silent. Lotus Sun could feel the overflowing sword chi converging in the air. The sword spirits of the King group were dispersing their sword chi and using it to establish a special spiritual connection to search for their own kind. Then, all kinds of voices of forming factions surged through the sword battle arena. Great sword party! Come with me. If you don't, you're just a lackey. If the heavens hadn't given birth to my long sword, all eternity would be like a long night. Where is the long sword party? Many of the sword spirits watching the competition were puzzled. They didn't understand why the sword spirits of the King group hadn't started fighting yet. Because their cultivation levels were too low, they couldn't hear the sword spirits of the King group communicating with their sword chi. In the judges' seats, Yu Ling frowned slightly. This kind of alliance is actually disadvantageous to Miss Sunday. The sword spirits of the King group have formed small teams like this, and their attacks are more organized and disciplined. Plus, they're hostile to Miss Sun's existence. I'm afraid it's going to be a little difficult. Not necessarily. Nine Nether shook her head and said, Miss Sun is Lady Bai Chao's disciple. You saw the sword chi when she became one with her sword. There's something very strange. I don't know why I can sense the power of Heavenly Tao in Mysterious C's sword chi. Yu Ling frowned slightly. She still didn't know that Mysterious C had fused with the Heavenly Tao magic cube. Nine Nether smiled. Mysterious C now has 4 cores. He has 4 Heavenly Tao magic cubes in his body. 4 Heavenly Tao magic cubes. Yu Ling almost cried out in surprise. When she realized that she had forgotten herself, her little face turned red. Why did he fuse so many? She's Lady Bai Chao's disciple, of course she gets preferential treatment. Now that the new magic cube has replaced the old magic cube, it's good that the old magic cube has been recycled and reused, said Nine Nether. Who knew whether it was out of envy or jealousy? But Yu Ling snorted softly. Humph, that's all there is, Lemon. By now, a full 3 minutes had passed since the start of the match. The sword spirits of the King group hadn't moved at all. They were using their sword chi to quickly communicate, and the sounds of teams forming rang out incessantly. At that moment, in the mental space created by sword chi, someone suddenly shouted, Lotus Sun, I love you. I am Big Sword. I will always support Lotus Sun. Miss Sun. I'm on your side. No one can stop me. The short sword party will always love Lotus Sun. After these 2 shouts, the sword spirits of the King group who had been forming teams all revealed angry expressions. Damn. Who shouted that? It's so weird. There's a traitor in our sword spirit team. No. It's not just one, it seems like there are many. In the sword chi channel, Endless and Old Barbarian changed their voices in various ways to sow discord in order to stop the sword spirits of the King group from forming an alliance. Very quickly, their plan took effect. When the sword spirits who had been looking for a team heard this, they couldn't restrain their anger, as if everyone they looked at was a traitor. The scene quickly became chaotic. Lotus Sun's eyes turned wary. At that moment, a female sword spirit with short white hair and a pair of leather shorts suddenly charged at Lotus Sunday. The day the broken sword is reforged, the day the night returns. It's all your fault, human woman. Eat my sword first. I'm going to cut you down from Mount Everest into a flat-topped mountain. Chapter 14:27. The sword spirit, who had short white hair and was wearing a midriff-bearing leather vest and sexy leather shorts, brandished her large green sword and made funny faces as she slashed toward Lotus Sunday. This sword spirit was called Cool Wind, and as her name suggested, she was dressed very coolly. The ghost face sword technique, with the taunting effect, was one of her killing moves. This sword technique had a facial illusion effect, and if you looked her in the eye, you would be provoked into anger. In a fight, being provoked was actually a big taboo, because anger could affect a person's normal judgment and lead to mistakes. But Mysterious C's sword chi was extremely powerful, and in the face of such an illusion, the silent nourishment ability was activated. When the sword chi spread out, all the illusions were seen through. Cool Wind's ghost face sword technique had no effect at all in front of Lotus Sun, and it was like a punch hitting cotton. Looking at the sword spirit who was making funny faces at her and slashing at her, Lotus Sun fell into a brief silence. Under normal circumstances, if she saw this ghost face, she would definitely be angry. But because the ghost face sword technique had failed, Cool Wind's grimacing looked more like she was acting cute. Very cute. She wanted to pinch her own face. But at this moment, Lotus Sun suddenly realized something. Could it be that this was the legendary Lightspeed QA? In the face of Cool Wind's attack, Lotus Sun swiftly drew her sword to block. Mysterious C's sword chi was more profound than Cool Wind had imagined. The moment the blades collided, she felt all the strength in her body disappear like a clay ox in the sea, swallowed up by Mysterious C's boundless rage sword chi. Then, a powerful backlash came, causing Cool Wind to be sent flying. Watch out! Although the girl had said some outrageous things to her at the beginning, she didn't take it to heart. Instead, she was worried about Cool Wind's comfort. The moment Cool Wind was sent flying, she felt that the sword chi from Mysterious C's backlash was like a digging tractor crashing into her at high speed. Just when Cool Wind thought she was going to be seriously injured and eliminated, the incomparably ferocious sword chi instantly disintegrated halfway, turning into a gentle force that supported her waist and firmly placed her on the ground. Sorry, I used too much strength, Lotus Sun said. She felt that she didn't have good control over Mysterious C's power. The competition was one thing, but she didn't want to seriously injure the sword spirit here. Repaying evil with good? As expected of Miss Lotus Sun, but this is a competition. Swords have no eyes. Nine Nether shook his head in the judging panel. He felt that the girl was a little too naive. However, at this moment, a shocking scene occurred. Just as Lotus Sun was speaking, another streak of sword chi sneaked up on her from behind. Seeing this, Cool Breeze hurriedly rushed over, pushed her away, and fought with the owner of the sword chi. Bang! After the sound of swords clashing, the two figures in the air quickly separated. Sneak attack from behind? Who do you think you are? The irascible Cool Breeze scolded loudly. She didn't look like a girl at all. You didn't have to save me just now. Lotus Sun looked at Cool Wind's back and smiled. Cool Breeze turned his head and blushed. Humph! Who wants to save you? I just don't want to give up my prey to others. As soon as he said this, Cool Breeze collided with another streak of sword chi that had attacked Lotus Sunday. So annoying, why do you always have to target my prey? At that moment, Cool Breeze gripped his big sword and roared angrily. Then I'll kill all of you. And then kill my prey. He roared very loudly, but Lotus Sun could clearly feel that Cool Breeze's hostility had completely disappeared. F***K. She actually defeated a sword spirit just like that. In the judging panel, you couldn't help cursing as she began to realize that this Miss Sun in front of her was different from the others. This is Lotus Sun's domain. In the heavenly room, Loopy Toad looked at this familiar scene and felt that it was recalling a lot of things. The essence of Lotus Sun's domain was the power to capture people's hearts. This kind of power generally only worked on passers-by, but its effect would weaken over time. With the power of the Mysterious Sea Sword Chi, Loopy Toad was surprised to find that Lotus Sun's domain seemed to have been upgraded. It could automatically increase the favorability of those around it and attack it. In just one move, the girl had defeated a sword spirit, which stupefied Loopy Toad a little. In Loopy Toad's view, Lotus Sun had always possessed an incredible power. Unfortunately, the power of the domain is still too weak. At least for little Master Ling, it's far from enough. At that moment, Loopy Toad was lost in thought as it gazed at the image on the screen. In the sword battle arena, Loopy Toad was relying on the favorability effect of Lotus Sun's domain. It seemed that Lotus Sun really had gathered a lot of allies. At first, the King Group sword spirits had clamored to form an alliance to eliminate Lotus Sun, but in the end, it had turned into an alliance to protect her. Of course, the two actors Wu Jin and Old Barbarian had also played a big part in this. Following Lotus Sun, they repeated the same trick they had used on the Cool Breeze. They pretended to attack Lotus Sun from behind, and then lured the sword spirits protected by the girl into helping her. Ah, sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Does it hurt if the sword chi is a little stronger? Careful. Sneak attack from behind. How shameless. Who wants to help you? I just can't stand them using dirty tricks. Sorry, I almost seriously injured you. Hey, someone sneak attacking you from behind. Get out of the way. Leave it to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not helping you, I'm just an upright spirit sword. In the sword battle arena, these three mystical sentences were repeated countless times. Then, more and more sword spirits inexplicably joined Lotus Sun's alliance. What the hell is going on? Why are so many people helping this human girl? In the audience seats, many of the sword spirits watching were so angry that they stamped their feet. Most of them had placed their bets on the King Group Sword Dao meet sword spirits and had paid a huge price. Some of them had even gone bankrupt and invested all their finances in betting on the Sword Dao meet. In the end, no one had expected that less than 10 minutes after the start of the King Group Sword Dao meet, a third of the sword spirits had already been defeated and had automatically joined the Protect Lotus Sun camp. Looking at the flustered and exasperated sword spirits in the audience seats, Wuxia and Old Barbarian sneered in their hearts. Heh! Gambling dogs die a horrible death. In the end, 70% of the King Group sword spirits had been defeated by the girl. It looked like there was already no suspense in this match. However, in Sky Room number 2, from beginning to end, the expression on Wang Ling's face didn't relax. He could sense that the people from Infinite Milky Way were about to make a move. Chapter 1428. In the Sword Dao meet, after using the upgraded Lotus Sun domain to obtain an overwhelming advantage in all aspects, it seemed like the champion was already a foregone conclusion. In order to protect the girl, the sword spirits that had been conquered engaged in a fierce battle with the remaining sword spirits, resulting in heavy losses on both sides. In the end, there were less than a dozen sword spirits left in the field. Led by Old K, the last 5 sword spirits would rather die than submit. All of them glared angrily at Lotus Sun and the sword spirit bootlickers who had been conquered behind the girl. At this moment, Old K stood at the forefront in his thick golden armor, his beard fluttering in the wind, looking very much like a Saint Seiya. Heh! I, Old K, am not like those bootlickers behind you. Bootlickers? It means lackey plus bootlicker. The sword spirit called Old K was surrounded by golden sword chi. His nickname was the Sword of the King, and he was the 12th ranked sword spirit. His true form was a poker card K. It was said that Dao ancestor Wang had been in seclusion in the Sword King realm and had played landlord with his clone out of boredom. Who would have thought that even the poker card would become a sword spirit? Old K, what's done can't be undone. I think you'd better give up. You can't imagine Miss Sun's charm. We've already decided to push Miss Sun to win. If you don't, we'll launch a collective attack and take you down with us. Wuxia said, earnestly analyzing the situation for Old K. Now, not including Miss Sun, there are still 6 of us left. We have 1 more than you, and Old Man hasn't even used his 5-second man yet. If we go all out at the end, you'll definitely lose. Ha! Not necessarily. Old K snorted. As a man with the title of the Sword of the King, he naturally wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Crack! Thud! He stabbed his giant golden sword into the ground. At this moment, 3 different colored sword chi appeared around his body, gushing out from the giant golden sword. It's actually the Great Sword Gambling Technique. Wuxia frowned. What's the Great Sword Gambling Technique? Although she knew that her question might be inappropriate at this time, Lotus Sun still couldn't suppress her curiosity. Miss Sun, do you see the golden, blue, and red sword chi on that giant golden sword? Wuxia explained. This 3-colored sword energy was the foundation of Old K's sword gambling art. The golden sword chi could cause those who were attacked by the sword chi to fall into a paralyzed state, unable to move, as if they had been drugged. The blue sword chi could quickly heal the injuries of a specific person. The red sword chi could create an extremely powerful suicidal sword strike, causing a huge explosion. Now that the champion group's group matches were nearing the end, almost everyone was injured to varying degrees. In a situation where they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, Old K choosing to gamble with swords at this time was indeed a wise choice. When Old K pulled the giant sword out of the ground, the originally emitted three-colored sword chi would go berserk, causing Old K's golden giant sword to change color. At that time, the giant sword would randomly choose one of the three sword energies and transform it into its own power. Wu Jin didn't expect Old K to be so desperate. This was because this great sword gambling art was a secret technique that would cost one's cultivation. Although it was Old K's ultimate skill, very few people had actually seen Old K use it. You actually want to gamble with swords? Wu Jin frowned. What's the point of saying so much? Since he wants to gamble, then let's make him fail. Cool Breeze said from the side. She wanted to rush out and stop the release of this technique. However, Wu Jin stopped her on the spot. If you don't want to be cursed, then stay put. Curse. Cool Breeze was puzzled. Once the Great Sword Gambling Arts Array is formed, we can only gamble with him. Legend has it that the Great Sword Gambling Arts Array contains a curse of the Tao Ancestor. If we interfere with the array, we will definitely be cursed by the Tao Ancestor. Wu Jin said. At this point, Old K, who was wearing heavy golden armor, couldn't help but laugh. It seems that you understand my situation very well. Not bad. You're right. Interfering with the array will indeed cause terrible things to happen. Perhaps because he expected that no sword spirit would dare to cross the line and forcibly interrupt the Great Sword Gambling Arts Array, Old K's expression was particularly excited and confident. However, for Old K, there were still variables in this Great Sword Gambling art. Although sword spirits could indeed be cursed, if it was a human. In fact, he hadn't done any corresponding experiments. Thus, Lotus Sun became Old K's only worry after he started the Great Sword Gambling art. Perhaps he was afraid that the young girl wouldn't understand the rules and would ruin his plans. Now that Old K had calmed down, he turned his gaze to the only human girl present. Miss, let me ask you, do you dare to gamble with me? If Senior insists on doing things his own way, of course I can't stop him. I just hope that Senior won't hurt himself. Also, gambling itself is wrong, Lotus Sun advised patiently. Lotus Sun patiently admonished it, but she was certain that the sword spirit of the poker sword would never listen to her. Good. You're indeed a heroine. But there's no need for Miss to worry about gambling harming the body. Old K laughed fiercely. If I draw the red card, no matter what the result is, I will forfeit this match. In the current situation, if the giant sword was drawn, both the golden and blue sword chi would be advantageous to their side. But if they drew the red sword chi, then the situation would truly be hopeless. Both had about a 33% probability. The overall probability of Old K drawing the sword chi favorable to him was 66%. He felt that he wouldn't be so unlucky. Miss Sun, don't be afraid. If he draws the red self-destructing sword chi, he's finished. At this time, Old Barbarian also said, when the time comes, I'll add the power of 5 seconds True Man to you so that you're completely immune to this damage. Actually, I can do it myself. Say no more, Miss Sunday. Our goal in this competition is to help you win the championship. Old Barbarian said telepathically, you don't need to worry about anything else. I know Miss Mysterious C is very strong, but you have to give us a chance to show off. Faced with Old Barbarian's enthusiasm, Lotus Sun really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Calculating that the Great Sword Gambling art was about to finish charging up, Old K stepped forward and grasped the giant sword's hilt. As for what the result would be, everything would be revealed the moment he pulled it out. Then, there was a ripping sound. Following Old K's unsheathing of the golden great sword, a red light erupted from the blade like a volcanic eruption. It's the red sword chi. Seeing this scene, the remaining sword spirits in the field divided the last of their strength to fuse with the sword chi and build a defensive array together. However, the explosion of this red suicidal sword chi was too fast and violent. There was a rumble. A huge mushroom cloud rose from the ground. The 5 sword spirits on Old K's side were instantly sent flying backwards like scarecrows. In the field, heat waves assailed the nostrils. In the judges' seats, Nine Nether, Yu Ling Mou, and Little Qian had gathered their strength to build an impenetrable barrier, protecting all the sword spirits in the spectator stands. What's the result? Yu Ling was curious. She couldn't wait to see through the thick smoke on the field. Then she saw. The 7 people on Lotus Sun's side were unharmed. With old barbarians' protection and Mysterious Sea's blue sword chi, they were firmly protected. Even if the sword spirits were injured, they would be healed by Mysterious Sea's gentle sword chi. On the other hand, Old K's side seemed to be in a more tragic situation. Apart from Old K, the other members of the giant sword faction were all seriously injured. At this time, Old K stood up and looked at Lotus Sunday. Now, according to the agreement, I forfeit this match. In the judges' seats, facing Old K, Mou frowned slightly. He's really forfeiting? He's such a good gambler? Not necessarily. Nine Nether smiled meaningfully. That's what he's calculated. Calculated it. He calculated it. He must have drawn the red suicidal sword chi, Nine Nether said. The evidence is that while almost all the members of the giant sword faction on Old K's side were seriously injured, Old K himself was unscathed. This shows that he had already made preparations to prevent self-destruction. In addition, Yu Ling continued Nine Nether's words, saying, in addition, all the casinos in the Sword King world are run by Old K. So in this year's King group of bets, the biggest winner is probably Old K himself. You mean? Mou was frightened by Old K's scheming, her beautiful face turning pale. I mean that before the start of the competition, Old K might have bet all his money on Miss Sun, Yu Ling said. Chapter 1429. The unprecedentedly grand sword Dao meet finally came to an end with Lotus Sun's victory. For the four judges, Nine Nether, Yu Ling, Mou, and Little Qian, this result was no surprise, because it had been predetermined. But for the sword spirits watching the competition, this result was clearly a little surprising. And most importantly, at the end of the competition, Old K's sword gambling skill actually added extra authenticity to the King's Group competition. Because gambling itself had its own uncertainties. If Old K really drew a blue or golden sword aura, he might be able to turn the tables around. Before the King's Group competition ended, Cool Breeze glared fiercely at Lotus Sun, the anger surging out of his eyes as if he had an irreconcilable hatred for her. Humph. I'm only forfeiting because I'm severely injured and need treatment. It's not because I have a good impression of you that I'm intentionally going easy on you. So, where else does it hurt? Lotus Sun laughed. Back in the arena, Cool Breeze's injuries had already been mostly healed by Mysterious Sea's sword chi, so they weren't actually very serious. Screw you. Red-faced, Cool Breeze rolled his eyes and left in a hurry. She was ranked 16th on the sword list, so she also wanted face. Until this moment, no one would have thought that a chaotic situation was about to unfold. Lotus Sun watched as Cool Breeze left through the passage. This female sword spirit was unforgettable to her. Although her mouth said no, her body was very honest. This was Lotus Sun's evaluation of Cool Breeze. Her extremely tsundra personality also made Lotus Sun feel very cute. She watched Cool Breeze walk all the way to the entrance of the passage, watching his figure gradually disappear into the passage. At this moment, there was a sudden shocking tremor on the ground. Is this an earthquake? Lotus Sun frowned. She sensed that something was wrong. It was an oppressive force from above. Caught off guard, Lotus Sun raised her head and suddenly felt as if an incomparably evil force was seeping in from the endless and deep universe. This force was like a knife, mercilessly cutting open the sword storm of the King's Group, and then falling densely from the sky. Countless sword spirits were shocked by this sudden and overwhelming force. Bang! The defensive sword barrier formed by Nine Nether and the others was easily shattered like glass under this overwhelming pressure. What exactly is going on? Yu Ling frowned deeply. This pressure was too shocking. Even with her battle prowess as one of the top 3 on the sword rankings, it was still a little unbearable. She felt as if her throat was being choked by something, and even breathing became extremely difficult. What is this? Mou was shocked by this pressure. The jade crown on her head changed color according to her emotions, turning into a frightened purple. The faces of Nine Nether and Little Qian had also changed. This sudden and inexplicable force caused them to be at a loss for what to do. The entire Old Sword City and the Sword King world sword spirits started to panic. An invisible creature fell from the sky like rain. It was impossible to tell what it was, but under the illumination of the light, its body turned into a rainbow color. Their bodies were transparent, like colored glass. After landing on the ground, They began to squirm rhythmically. What is that? It looks like a worm. Where did this bug come from? Nine Nether and the others discussed it. Their first reaction after splitting off their sword chi was to kill these bugs. However, when their sword chi swept across these colorful insects, these sword chi were all absorbed by these insects. Then they started to grow from the size of a grain of rice to the size of a child. Wang Ling watched this scene from the inn. His heart was as calm as an ancient well. The people from the infinite galaxy had finally made their move. What the hell is this? This inexplicably dangerous aura made Loopy Toad uncomfortable all over. Its fur stood on end as it swiftly came to Wang Ling's side from Lotus Sun's room. There's no mistake. This is a strange creature born from chaos, from the infinite galaxy, said Wang Ying. This kind of creature from chaos had never been seen in the Milky Way. This was a type of seven-colored bug. When it was young, it was only the size of a grain of rice, and in its first stage it was the size of a child. From this stage onward, it had the ability to hug faces, which would completely drain the spirit power in the body of the target it was hugging. They fed on energy and could devour spirit energy. As long as it contained spirit energy, it would be like a school of man-eating fish in a tropical river that swarmed at the sight of meat. It would be devoured clean in an instant. It seems that the other party's goal isn't just Lang Ming and Miss Sun. They even want to destroy Sword King World. Wang Ying frowned slightly. This was already an enemy that Lotus Sun couldn't deal with. Now they had to change hands. Fortunately, Wang Ling had already made arrangements. In the sword battle arena, when these chaos face-hugging bugs absorbed sword chi from the size of a grain of rice and evolved into adult bugs, a snow-white figure also arrived shortly after. Get lost! A youngster in a snow-white fur coat arrived and withstood all the pressure on his own. Brown sword chi swept the scene. Although these face-hugging bugs could devour spirit power, their stomachs were limited before they had fully matured, and they exploded on the ground one after another. Like crushed eyeballs, rainbow goo flowed all over the ground. It's Lord Jing Bai. Lord Jinka and Lord Bai Qiao have fused. A sword spirit cried out excitedly. They rarely even saw Jinka. But now they saw Jing Bai. He felt as if he was dreaming. Your Excellency. The pressure dissipated, and Nine Nether and the others stepped forward and bowed. On my command, all sword spirits in the top 10,000 on the sword list, move out. Eliminate the enemy. There's no need to hold back. Attack with all your might. They won't be able to devour so much energy when they reach the first stage. The rest of you, withdraw your sword chi. Don't let them become nutrients for these face-hugging bugs. Jing Bai ordered. Yes, Your Excellency. Nine Nether obeyed. They had to unite the Sword King world, and the key to fighting back was that these bugs absolutely couldn't be allowed to develop into adults. The first and second stages of larvae could be dealt with, but if they developed into the third stage, it would be very difficult. When Lotus Sun opened her eyes again, she found herself in a brand new place. A school at night? The girl looked at the scene in front of her in astonishment, and was stunned to realize that this seemed to be the number 60 high she was familiar with. She released Mysterious Sea's sword chi, and in the end realized that the world she was in was so vast that she couldn't see the end at all. This was a world shrouded in darkness. At that moment, Wang Ying's figure appeared. The defensive seed I planted on Ying earlier worked. If there's any danger, you'll be sent here together. So this is... You still don't know where you are. Wang Ying laughed. What a silly girl. It looks like a place similar to the core world. Lotus Sun said. Not similar. This is the core world. Wang Ying nodded and looked at Lotus Sunday. You're now in Lord Ling's own core world. Lotus Sun. This is classmate Wang Ling's core world. At that moment, she looked at the girl's astonished little face in front of her. Wang Ying instantly felt a little emotional. Unknowingly, you've already become his world. And now, he only had to wait for the day that the sealed twilight was broken through by the light. Chapter 1430. Chaos facehuggers were hard to deal with, but in the end, they were just minions sent by the other side. This was the other side's most basic test. They had yet to use their real trump card. As Wang Ling and the monk had expected, while Sword King World had been attacked, Earth had also been attacked by chaos facehuggers from the infinite Milky Way. Those incorporeal eggs looked colorful when the light passed through them. They were falling densely along the Earth's latitude and longitude lines, as well as various coordinates, like heavy snowflakes. The monk strolled out of the main hall of Battlesec's True Venerate and looked up at the sky. These facehuggers were a huge problem for the sword spirits of Sword King World. Earth hadn't been upgraded for long, and it would take some time for cultivators all over the world to improve their quality. It would be hard to resist such a large-scale attack in a short period of time. Senior, as expected, the satellites all over the world have been disrupted. Wuxia Alliance is still asking us what on earth happened. His Excellency the Head of State is furious, said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. It's normal to have this kind of reaction in the face of unknown fear. The monk nodded and said, given the current quality of Earth's cultivators, it's normal that they can't sense these things born in the chaos. In fact, the monk was already prepared. Since Wang Ling had given him Earth, he would defend it even if he had to sacrifice his life. As early as last night, the monk had already cast a Buddhist net over the entire Earth. Although it couldn't completely filter out the facehuggers, it could block more than 90% of them. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. I still don't understand, what on earth is their purpose in attacking Earth? It must be for Miss Rong and that little sword spirit Lang Ming. Lang Ming is of great use to them, and Miss Rong's mysterious sea has already fused with 4 old Rubik's Cubes. As for attacking Earth, I'm afraid it's just something they did in passing. Something in passing? Senior Immortal, haven't you noticed? At that moment, the monk turned his head to look at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Dao Ancestor Wang set up 9 Rubik's Cubes back then, and the 9th one is on Earth. But Ling Zhenren has already replaced the 9th Rubik's Cube. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was alarmed when he heard this. When I upgraded Mysterious Sea for Miss Rong for the first time, said the monk. Then, with Miss Rong's Mysterious Sea, it's actually with 5 Rubik's Cubes? That's right. However, we're worried that Miss Rong won't be able to control her power very well, so we haven't activated the Rubik's Cube yet. Tyrant smiled. So, I'm afraid he won't be able to retrieve the old Rubik's Cube. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Since the other party could think of snatching the 9th cube along the way, doesn't that mean that apart from the 5 old Rubik's Cubes in Miss Lotusun's hands, they have already collected the remaining 4? It's like this. So, you're saying that everything was planned. Let them help us collect it. Miss Rong can also relax a little. The monk nodded. After all, the journey of collecting the old Rubik's Cube is very risky. The immortal star that Miss Rong went to seems very friendly, but in fact, it is full of danger. Ling Zhenren and Lord Ying had arranged everything in advance. An angry unaging star is indeed terrifying. How do we do that? Hey! But your brother has always been poor. Where did he get so much money? Just one sentence. For example, if they don't listen, I'll kill them all. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stunned. This was definitely a naked threat. At that moment, the monk looked up. Through the writing on the wall, he could see that the Buddhist net that had been set up last night had already begun to be triggered. There were still 10% of the Chaos facehuggers left on Earth, and they had to be cleaned up manually. For this reason, the monk had found the core members of Battle Sect last night and cast a temporary illumination spell on everyone's Naiwan palaces. The Naiwan palaces were spiritual hubs, and under the effect of the illumination spell, they could greatly enhance their spiritual perception for a short period of time and expand everyone's spiritual senses. This was all to make it easier for everyone in Battle Sect to find the facehuggers that had been left on Earth. Sect leader, I'll have to trouble you to act according to my orders. All right. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed. After watching Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal leave to assign tasks, the monk tiptoed off the ground and turned into a streak of light that shot through Earth's atmosphere like a rocket into outer space. The other party was determined to get the 9th old Rubik's Cube. But the truth was that this Rubik's Cube on Earth had already been replaced. So why did the monk still work so hard to protect Earth? The reason was very simple. Because if he didn't work hard, the other party probably wouldn't take the bait so easily. The more he tried to protect it, the more he could give the false impression that this thing was very important to them. This was all to trick the other party into going all out and bringing this new Rubik's Cube back. The new Rubik's Cube was a trap. If the other party brought it back, they might not even need to steal the tower, and could directly blow up the crystal base on the other side. So far, everything had gone smoothly. But the monk didn't let down his guard because of this. After all,
The other party came from the infinite Milky Way, and this was the first time in his life that he had ever seen a chaos facehugger of this scale.
Since the other party had been able to collect so many eggs to launch an attack, it was likely that they had been preparing for this for many years. Once they chose to make a move, they were bound to be extremely confident in their actions. "Sir, please come out. This humble monk is right here." Not far from Earth, the monk, dressed in a purple and gold kasaya, was gazing somewhere. Very quickly, a figure surrounded by starlight appeared. Surrounded by starlight, the young man's figure gradually solidified into a solid form. "Monk, we haven't seen each other for so many years, but you're still so simple." The young man surrounded by starlight greeted the monk as if he knew him. The young man was tall and handsome, and his fair skin was exceptionally eye-catching under the starlight. Peng Shiren. The monk was once a lifelong enemy. But he had died a long time ago. But this time, the monk had a premonition that this person might still be alive. Everything was exactly as he had expected. The monk's expression was indifferent as he stared at the other party. "That fortune teller was you, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Peng Shiren smiled, not wanting to admit it. "You've always been proud and aloof, but you've actually become someone else's chess piece. If the Tao ancestor knew about this, he would definitely be very disappointed." The monk lowered his eyelids and sighed. "It's just that we each take what we need." Peng Shiren put his hands behind his back and corrected him. "I'm not a chess piece. I'm just that person's opponent. Everything is built on equal conditions. If something really goes wrong in the end, killing him will be as easy as raising my hand." "You're too confident." The monk frowned slightly. "You still don't understand that person. You don't know how much the Tao ancestor had to pay to seal him back then." "Cut the crap, bald donkey. You don't understand me at all." Peng Shiren smiled at the monk in front of him. "Because I'm Tao ancestor Wang's only disciple." Chapter 1431. Tyrant wasn't surprised that Peng Shiren was still alive. After all, just as he said, he was Tao ancestor Wang's only disciple. Be it in the cultivation world or other places, it seemed that as long as one had a certain level of ability, they all liked to play this fake death game, as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know that they were big shots. Tyrant sighed silently. As for faking his death, he had actually played around with it before. Under normal circumstances, Almighties would fake their death in order to dig out the traitors around them and see the attitudes of the people around them. On the other hand, it was to avoid death tribulations. However, this was not the monk's intention. The monk faked his death back then just to be mischievous. He used the experience of one of his lives to experience it and found out that after faking his death, he would not be able to escape. Those who mourned, and commemorated. All sorts of evil spirits would surface after faking their deaths. This process was rather torturous, but the thrill was when he reappeared in front of everyone after his fake death was exposed. In front of him, the young man surrounded by starlight seemed to enjoy the feeling of surprise when others saw him. "So, the purpose of you faking your death is to have more energy to invest in the endless Milky Way and search for the Tao ancestor's heavenly tomb?" The monk guessed. "I already know where the heavenly tomb is. There was only one last step left. I will bring the sealed people along with me." Peng Shiren had already formulated the entire plan, as if victory was already in his grasp. "It seems like I can only fight." The monk closed his eyes. "Do you still remember that when you saw me, I was a Tao god? But now it's different." Peng Shiren smiled confidently as if victory was within his grasp. "I know that you've already stepped into the ancestor realm. If you were a Tao god, I wouldn't even bother to look at you." The monk laughed. Now that his strength had returned to its peak, he was even stronger than before. "Me too." Peng Shiren said, "We haven't seen each other for many years. Bald donkey, you've also become stronger. I wasn't your match in the past, but I want to see if I'm still weaker than you now." "There is always a mountain higher than the mountain. There is still a certain distance between you and your master," said the monk. Tao ancestor Wang's true realm was not just that of a Tao ancestor. He was the first person to enter the ancestor realm. That was why he was called Tao ancestor Wang. And now, Tao ancestor Wang was definitely stronger. Even if there is a distance, it won't be too far. I think I've caught up to master's footsteps. Peng Shiren. Boom. Starlight surged around his body, creating great waves. There was a type of powerful fluctuation surging about. At the same time, the blood energy in his body surged violently. A star dragon made of diamond rushed out from Peng Shiren's body. It struggled unceasingly and then burst out with a dragon roar. When the star dragon appeared, it directly scattered the surrounding starry sky. The energy fluctuations were too strong. Seeing that things weren't going well, Tyrant brought Peng Shiren and shifted the battlefield to the Milky Way extraterritorial galaxy the moment Peng Shiren summoned Star Dragon. It's useless even if you change the battlefield. I must obtain the Rubik's Cube on Earth. Peng Shiren opened his eyes. Shi Ha Chen. Chen I. Tian, I, Feng I, on, I ancestor I Dao, I said. Ion. I said I as I can. This is. The monk's gaze was deep as he stared at Peng Shiren, trying to see through him. Peng Shiren's body glowed. Starlight surrounded him, exuding an immortal power. After entering the Dao ancestor realm, Peng Shiren's realm was not the same as before. He was more oppressive than all the family heads in the deity realm combined. Not only have you entered the Dao ancestor realm, but you've also cultivated the Dao ancestor's myriad realm stardust technique to the 8th level. Such a change really surprised the monk because when he first met Peng Shiren, the young man had just started cultivating this technique and had not even cultivated to the 2nd level. But now, he had already cultivated it to the realm of the great perfection. The 8th level was called the inextinguishable diamond. As long as the power of the starlight was not exhausted, Peng Shiren would have an endless source of energy. Even if he was injured, he could quickly recover under the illumination of the surrounding starlight. Bald donkey, as you can see, I'm the inextinguishable son of the stars, Peng Shiren murmured. His eyes were cold. His body glowed and the star dragon roared. The myriad world stardust technique was the #1 technique of the Dao ancestor. He was invincible on the battlefield of the universe. I'll let you know what it means to be invincible. Kill. Peng Shiren's hair was shimmering with starlight. His eyes were frightening. Without any makeup, he threw a punch at the monk's head. The small fist condensed countless starlight around it. This was Peng Shiren condensing the power of the stars. He had refined all the bones in his body into the supreme star bone. He could absorb the power of the starlight around him to increase the density of his bones and greatly enhance his strength. This punch seemed unremarkable. It was not decorated with any skills, but it was still shocking. It would not be a problem to kill a family head in the deity realm. Boom. Monk Jin Deng held his breath. Facing this punch, he meditated and did not dodge. He took it with his own physical strength. In the end, the punch seemed to hit a hard piece of iron. With a hum, there was a high-frequency sound of metal colliding. The monk knew very well that Peng Shiren did not use his full strength in this punch. He only used about 30% of his strength. Cough. At this time, blood was seeping from the corner of the monk's mouth. Although he seemed to be unharmed, this punch had caused a certain amount of internal injuries. Bald donkey, you're too confident. You blocked it with your own body and did not leave any defensive means. Are you looking down on me? Peng Shiren said. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Ordinary opponents wouldn't even be able to withstand 10% of his strength. 30% of his strength was enough to destroy the soul. There were only a few people in this world who could withstand this punch of his. You're injured, bald donkey. Peng Shiren could not help but laugh. The monk's confidence had hurt him. However, just as he was feeling pleased with himself, he saw 3 dazzling Buddha flames suddenly bloom on the top of the monk's head. Peng Shiren's expression changed instantly. The 3 holy flames of Buddhism. You've actually comprehended them? He could tell at a glance that these 3 flames were the Buddha flames of the past, the Buddha flames of the present, and the Buddha flames of the future. Peng Shiren knew many people. However, it was rare to see someone who could comprehend 3 Buddha flames at the same time. As expected of his lifelong enemy, Peng Shiren's expression became excited. Now, his master had entered reincarnation and could not care about him for the time being. As long as he killed the monk in front of him. In this universe, no one could restrain him anymore. After all, in this universe, which was surrounded by stars, His 8th-level inextinguishable diamond was invincible. Chapter 1432. In the beginning, the Buddha fire was golden in color. Tyrant separated the 3 bundles of Buddha fire and transformed them into 3 different kinds of strange colors: past, present, and future. The 3 Buddha fires condensed on the top of the monk's head and swirled around his purple and gold kasaya. The gray Buddha fire represented the past. It symbolized the path that had already been taken. You could cherish the past, but you didn't have to cling to it. The meaning of gray was, let go of your attachment after having it. There were worries, but there were no more worries. Green Buddha fire represented the present. It represented good wishes for a smooth future. And white Buddha fire represented the future. It symbolized the unpredictability and all kinds of uncertainties. When the 3 flames gathered, it was like 3 flowers gathering above one's head, and the monk instantly became different. Bald donkey. I'm going to get serious. I'll definitely destroy you with my next attack. Peng Shiren narrowed his eyes and his whole body blossomed with starlight. Starlight gathered under his feet like a storm and transformed into a huge Qilin mount. This was a Dharma mount summoned by a powerful ability. The monk had thought it would be a star dragon, and hadn't expected it to be a Qilin. The dual Dharma form of a dragon and a Qilin. Tyrant frowned slightly. He looked at the young man who was surrounded by the starlight in front of him. A trace of unusual change that was invisible to the naked eye flashed across his calm expression. He was Tao Ancestor Wang's only disciple. Peng Shiren was indeed the #1 favored son of heaven since ancient times. The imperial Dharma images of a dragon and a Qilin could actually appear on one person at the same time. If anyone else had been here, they would definitely have been scared out of their wits. Kill. Standing on the Qilin's head with one hand on the Qilin's horn, Wang Ling spurred the mount down like a falling mountain toward the monk. The Qilin raised its front hooves and abruptly smashed them down. The star dragon mark on Wang Ling's body burst out with light, and the twin life magic superimposed on each other, giving him immense strength. At the same time, Wang Ling was calmly observing the battle on the front line through the king's eye. As expected, it's very strong. At least the special effects are good enough. Loopy Toad watched on the side with trepidation. In terms of the situation, the duel between Peng Shiren and the monk didn't seem inferior to the duel between Wang Ling and Wang Ying earlier. The image projected by the king's eye could also very realistically convey the oppressive feeling of the scene here. He comes from the infinite Milky Way and is Tao Ancestor Wang's #1 disciple. As expected, he's extraordinary. Loopy Toad sighed as it observed a certain person's reaction on the side. To be honest, after seeing Peng Shiren's strength, Loopy Toad suddenly had doubts in its heart. It didn't know if Wang Ling could beat Peng Shiren. However, this concern was quickly dispelled. Because on the side, Wang Ling's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if they were watching an ordinary movie with special effects. No ripples were actually the best reaction. This proved that Commander Ling's strength was definitely not inferior to Peng Shiren's. So here's the problem. Even if he could defeat them, would Peng Shiren be insta-killed like the others before him? It was too curious and couldn't help asking Wang Ling. How is it? Wang Ling? ? Loopy Toad. Can this person be insta-killed? Wang Ling. Very difficult. Is it difficult? Loopy Toad's face was full of disbelief. It was extremely astonished. It hadn't expected that the lord it had known for so long would give such an answer. But since he had said so, it seemed that this Peng Shiren indeed wasn't an ordinary person. Wang Ying couldn't help laughing as she looked at Loopy Toad. What are you thinking? What Commander Ling means is that it's very difficult for this Peng Shiren not to be insta-killed. Loopy Toad was stunned. So this was the true meaning of very difficult? What F*** king difficult? Loopy Toad. This is a Tao Ancestor, Wang Ying. Tao Ancestor, what's wrong? If he's a Tao Ancestor, doesn't he need to be slapped? Loopy Toad. But I clearly saw Little Master Ling's troubled expression, Wang Ying. He thinks it's too monotonous to slap him to death every time, and doesn't know what to do. Loopy Toad. And? Wang Ying's eyes dimmed at this point, and she didn't say anything else. There was another thing. The source of the fortune teller was undoubtedly Peng Shiren. This debt needed to be settled. And from the looks of it, there was a lot of other information on Peng Shiren. It would be a pity to kill him directly. It would be best if he could be beaten half to death. So keeping his HP down was very important. This was the problem that Wang Ling was having a headache over. Elsewhere, the battle between Peng Shiren and the monk was still going on. The Qilin Dharma image soared through the sky, and when its iron hooves stomped down, the monk's body was instantly torn apart and crushed into golden powder. It's a fake body. But Peng Shiren was Peng Shiren in the end. As Tao ancestor Wang's only disciple, he could see through the monk's trick of using a fake body at a glance. To be able to swap a leopard cat for a crown prince right under Peng Shiren's nose, Peng Shiren couldn't help but admire the monk's magic power. Monk, you can't get rid of me. In the universe, all the stars are my eyes. Although he still couldn't see the monk's figure, he clearly knew where the monk's real body was. Earlier, the monk had used 3 balls of Buddha fire to cover himself. These 3 kinds of Buddha fire, which controlled the power of the past, present and future, could distort time and space, thus diluting one's spatial presence. But this trick obviously wouldn't fool Peng Shiren. This poor monk is here. When the monk stood in front of Peng Shiren again, Peng Shiren realized that the monk's head was aimed at him. Peng Shiren actually didn't understand what the monk was trying to do. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Monk, are you trying to use the iron head technique to hit me? I'm afraid you can't withstand my physical strength at all. Hitting me with your head is just digging your own grave. Just as he finished speaking, in front of him, the monk's head suddenly emitted a series of machine gun-like da-da-da-da-da sounds, and blue flames rapidly appeared. Tens of thousands of missiles appeared from the 6 scars on the monk's head. These missiles were only the size of a pen, but each of them contained shocking and terrifying energy. What was that? Peng Shiren was puzzled by the monk's actions. To be honest, he was shocked. The missiles that were fired from the scars on the monk's head were shockingly powerful and filled with unimaginable power. Most importantly, Peng Shiren actually smelled the scent of a heavenly tribulation. This monk can actually use his own abilities to summon the heavenly tribulation? Peng Shiren frowned, finding it hard to understand. The heavenly tribulation was a divine power that was naturally produced when one's realm crossed. The higher one's realm, the stronger the heavenly tribulation they faced. Peng Shiren remembered that when he leaped from the Tao God realm to the Tao ancestor realm, the scene was so exaggerated that he nearly died in that tribulation. But now, the missiles that the monk fired from the scars were actually the same power as when he transcended the heavenly tribulation. How did he do it? The monk couldn't help but laugh. This is the power of the heavenly tribulation that this penniless monk absorbed after nearly 4,000 reincarnations. Now, this penniless monk will shoot them all out and give you a wave of rockets. Chapter 1433. It was the energy of the apocalypse that the monk had condensed after almost 4,000 reincarnations. During every apocalypse, the monk had the habit of absorbing the energy of the apocalypse with the ring scar and storing it. All the energy would reside in the top of the monk's skull as a backup energy source for emergencies. For example, when the monk traveled the universe, the apocalypse could supply him with a huge amount of spiritual energy in case he ran out of spiritual energy. For example, when the monk wanted to eat hot pot, he would set up a pot above his head, put some vegetables in it, and heat it with the spiritual energy brought by the apocalypse. Another example was the monk's light consecration technique. The consecration technique consumed a lot of spiritual energy, but it was much more convenient with the energy of the apocalypse. The energy of the apocalypse that was stored could also be used as a weapon. As long as it was combined with the iron in his body, the monk could quickly condense a missile coat that contained the energy of the apocalypse and launch it from his ring scar. What a lunatic! He's actually storing the apocalypse in his skull. Peng Shiren did not expect the monk to have such a trick at all. The energy of the apocalypse was too violent. Was it something that could be stored in one's head? If it was not careful, one's head might explode. It could only be said that the monk was indeed an iron-headed man. Such an action was no different from installing a nuclear power plant in one's head, which was in a state of high risk of leakage at any time. And now, the monk had created a lot of weapons with the mobile nuclear power plant in his head. What a joke! That was not the way of cultivation at all. Peng Shiren's expression was grave. The missiles that were launched seemed small, but they were extremely destructive. More importantly, there were too many of them. It was no different from the scene of tens of thousands of godly punishments descending on the world. Staring at the countless missiles, Peng Shiren immediately moved away to avoid them. However, the missiles had a tracking function and could completely ignore the obstacles in front of them. The aura of the apocalypse emitted from the warheads formed an energy coat that protected the warheads during the shuttle, which could ignore all the small meteorites in front of them. I have to block them with something bigger. Peng Shiren condensed the strength of his fist and punched through a small planet in front of him. He repaired the damaged planet with the power of stars the moment he passed it. His movement was so fast that some of the missiles that were tracking him crashed into it. Then, the planet would be blown to smithereens. Boom! The planet exploded. Accompanied by the shrill screams of the planet's spirit, flames and high temperatures erupted into the sky. At that moment, Peng Shiren looked behind him and saw that a large number of guided missiles had rushed out of the explosion zone. Damn it! Peng Shiren did not expect this guided missile to be so powerful. He used this method to try to exhaust the missiles, but found that in reality, it did not consume much at all. The guided missiles of the apocalypse were too powerful. Only one or two of the missiles at the front would be able to blow up a planet, and the large group of missiles behind them would still be able to pass through safely without any damage. There's no other way, monk. You forced me to do this. Peng Shiren realized that at this moment, if he didn't come up with some tricks, he would probably be at a disadvantage in this battle. Peng Shiren hadn't wanted to use his next killer move, which he had planned to use against Wang Ling. He might even be able to kill that young man with a single punch. But now, Peng Shiren felt that he had no choice but to act. These tens of thousands of guided missiles were indeed hard to deal with. But the monk had accumulated these guided missiles over a long period of time, and they weren't endless. Peng Shiren could only dodge them as he gathered the power of the stars around him. He was like a moving black hole that sucked in all the starlight nearby and condensed it into his body. The monk saw that the star dragon mark on Peng Shiren's body was glowing. At that moment, the monk's lips curled up coldly. Because he had already achieved his goal. The monk hadn't used the guided missiles to kill Peng Shiren in the first place. This man's methods were superb, and he definitely had a way to deal with guided missiles of this level. So from the beginning, the monk's goal had been to force out more of Peng Shiren's unique skills. He knew that Wang Ling was definitely watching the battle at that very moment. In this duel between the monk and Peng Shiren, winning or losing wasn't the key. The key was for Wang Ling on the other side to better understand Peng Shiren. After firing around 160,000 guided missiles, the monk's inventory was almost empty. The blue fire on the scar on the top of his head disappeared, and steam billowed out. Peng Shiren knew that his chance had come. Monk, your turn is over. It's my turn. The monk raised his eyebrows. He himself hadn't expected that his battle with Peng Shiren would actually be a turn-based game. But what kind of skill on earth would the other party use? The monk was also very curious. At that moment, the monk raised his smoking head and looked in front of him. He saw Peng Shiren suddenly stop somewhere in the depths of the Milky Way. Starlight burst out of his body and gave off a terrifying light. All the starlight he had absorbed while dodging earlier burst out at that moment, like a small sun. In just a split second, it was as if time in front of him had stopped. The burst of starlight actually distorted space and time, causing the flow of time in the surroundings to drop and slowing down the heavenly tribulation guided missiles that were charging forward at top speed. At that moment, it was as if the entire universe had been imprisoned, and only Peng Shiren's destructive starlight was dazzling and dazzling. This divine ability was so astonishing that even the monk was astonished for a moment. A few seconds felt like an eternity. Then, from a distance, Peng Shiren threw a punch in the monk's direction. Milky Way fist. Rumble. At that moment, all the starlight in Peng Shiren's body burst out, and a star dragon the size of a trillion charged at the monk as if it could directly reach the ends of the universe. This was a terrifying punch formed from the power of countless stars. Howl! As the star dragon closed in on the monk at the speed of light, it split into thousands and tens of thousands of dragons, and the sound shook the entire universe. The Milky Way outside the Milky Way was no longer calm. The enormous beam of energy produced by the Milky Way fist smashed everything in its path to smithereens. Monk, this is the last blow. Peng Shiren looked at his masterpiece, full of confidence. It went without saying that his Milky Way fist was immensely powerful. If he charged it longer, it would be even more powerful. This punch might not be able to kill the monk, but Peng Shiren didn't think it would be a problem at all for it to seriously injure him.
just as the Milky Way fist was about to reach the monk. At that moment, a figure appeared in front of the monk. "Welcome, immortal king." The monk closed his eyes and smiled. He stared at the incomparably dazzling star dragon that was the manifestation of the Milky Way fist in front of him, and blew gently.
Whoosh! There was a bang. The vast expanse of starlight in front of him instantly vanished like a candle flame. Chapter 1434. The Galaxy Fist was extremely powerful, and Wang Ling could clearly sense the universe resonating with it when it was used. He was worried that the monk wouldn't be able to withstand this blow, so he made a move. Although he hadn't used all his strength in this blow, it was definitely more than enough to withstand a head-on impact. But Wang Ling never expected that Peng Shiren's Galaxy Fist would actually be as weak as a candle, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. A little weak. Wang Ling felt that it was completely different from what he had imagined. Of course, the upper limit of the Galaxy Fist was actually quite high. After all, it was a fist technique that accumulated power. As long as Peng Shiren had enough time, he might really be able to accumulate enough power to injure Loopy Toad. After all, the universe was really too big. Boundless. Surrounded by countless stars, Peng Shiren gathered the power of the stars and condensed it into energy, which could be said to be inexhaustible. In the Inn in Sword King world, Wang Ying was broadcasting the scene in Wang Ling's place. He didn't have the king's eye. Thus, he could only use the shadow imaging spell. 4K, super high frame rate, smooth movements, zero delay. The only drawback was that the image was black and white. It gave Loopy Toad the feeling that it was watching an old black and white movie. Wang Ling had personally gone to help the monk, and Sword King world would be fine with him and Jing Bai there. Loopy Toad was so startled by this scene that its mouth fell open. Why do I feel like I just blew a birthday cake? It's already very impressive to be able to offset Lord Ling's breath. Otherwise, this breath might have directly pierced through the air and hit him, Wang Ying said as he folded his arms. So, the progenitor realm is actually very strong? Loopy Toad asked. Of course. Wang Ying nodded. There aren't many people in this world who are at the progenitor realm. Even the heads of the major families in the domain of the gods haven't been able to take this step. Only this person from the Gu family has shown some signs of it. Although this realm is extraordinary, it's still nothing compared to Lord Ling, Loopy Toad. Earlier, Wang Ling and Wang Ying had been worried about the infinite galaxy. Due to their lack of understanding of the infinite galaxy, they had imagined Peng Shiren to be a little too powerful, since he was an expert who could remove the Dao Talisman seal. Now that they saw it, they couldn't help but think, that's it. At that moment, Loopy Toad sighed. It looks like this Peng Shiren is going to die. Not necessarily. Wang Ying shook his head. Your lordship didn't intend to kill him, because there are still many questions he wants to ask him. Besides, this is a progenitor realm expert after all. He probably has many methods of resurrection. That's true. Loopy Toad nodded. At this moment, it suddenly had a question in its head. It was normal for someone like Peng Shiren to have life-saving skills. However, no matter how troublesome he was, could he be more troublesome than that Bai Jia? Who knew what that Bai Jia would think of him in the future and forcefully come over to cause trouble? On the other side, outside the Milky Way, after Wang Ling had quelled the Milky Way fist in one breath, the nearby space fell into a momentary silence. It's you! At that moment, Peng Shiren stared in horror at the figure that had suddenly appeared in front of the monk like a ghost. The corner of his eyes twitched. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Milky Way fist that he had condensed was extinguished by his opponent effortlessly. This was something Peng Shiren did not expect. He had long known that Wang Ling was very strong. He was definitely an expert above the progenitor realm. But now, Peng Shiren felt that he had still slightly underestimated Wang Ling's true battle strength. Although the monk's words earlier had been very soft, Peng Shiren had still heard them. He had heard Monk Golden Lamp say, "Welcome, Immortal King." Immortal King. What realm was this? After Dao Ancestor, all the realms had the word Ancestor. And Dao Ancestor was the beginning of the progenitor realm. But as far as Peng Shiren knew, there was no realm called Immortal King. Could it be that this was another realm beyond the progenitor realm? How was that possible? Peng Shiren frowned slightly. He didn't want to believe it. But this handsome man with dead fish eyes was standing in front of him. He didn't give off the slightest aura, but just by standing there, Peng Shiren felt an indescribable pressure. How dare you call yourself an immortal king? Even my Shifu isn't as conceited as you. Peng Shiren stared at Wang Ling's starlight gathered in his hands, and it looked like he was trying to condense a second Milky Way fist. Wang Ling had already sensed it long ago, but pretended not to know. In any case, this punch actually wasn't much of a threat to him when it didn't have enough power to build up. Immortal King. For Wang Ling, this was just a title. In fact, even Wang Ling himself didn't know what his limits were. At the very beginning when he was born, his realm had steadily increased every 2 years. But after that, the speed at which his realm grew was out of control. Until now, even Wang Ling himself didn't know how many realms he had broken through. There were even times when he broke through unconsciously. When he was sleeping, when he was studying, when he was squatting on the toilet, when he was eating crispy noodle snacks, when he was voting for Kushwan. He could break through at any time. And the strange thing was that he didn't need to go through a tribulation each time he broke through. He was completely different from other cultivators. So he didn't know if it was because he was born with amazing bones, or because the heavenly tribulation didn't dare provoke him at all. Bzzzt. While Wang Ling was in a daze, Peng Shiren in front of him moved again. He condensed godly power in his hands, and as he did so, he solidified the Dharma imprints on his arms. As if they had awakened, the 2 star dragon imprints abruptly jumped out of his arms and wrapped around Peng Shiren's forearms layer by layer. The dragons coiled around each other until they finally formed a spiral muzzle. It seems that this is the complete form of the Milky Way fist. The monk was astonished. He hadn't expected Peng Shiren to be able to transform his Dharma into a weapon. The power of the Milky Way fist in this form would be even greater. Peng Shiren was immensely pleased with himself and full of confidence. Wang Ling, you dare wait for me? Milky Way Cannon Fist Cannon. Have you finished accumulating power? Wang Ling spread his hands indifferently and motioned for Peng Shiren to do as he pleased. Peng Shiren was infuriated by Wang Ling's frivolous attitude. You're not even going to use your Dharma? Are you looking down on me? Do you think you can withstand my punch with just your physical strength? Wang Ling. Hearing this, he sighed silently. He just felt that this person in front of him was so troublesome. It was clearly for this person's sake that he hadn't used his Dharma. In the end, Peng Shiren blamed Wang Ling for looking down on him. Since he had already said so, Wang Ling felt that he didn't need to be polite anymore. In the blink of an eye, the size of a grain of rice appeared on Wang Ling's face. From a distance, it looked like a tear mole at the corner of his right eye. Are you kidding me? This mole is your Dharma? The corner of Peng Shiren's mouth twitched as he stared at the mole at the corner of Wang Ling's eye. And then there was no then. Staring at the mole, he instantly felt the space around him expand infinitely, and his entire mind went into a trance. In the next moment, Peng Shiren's face turned deathly pale. Because in this black mole, Peng Shiren saw something that he could not imagine, and that was terrifying. Chapter 1435. Peng Shiren rubbed his eyes. At first, he thought he was seeing things. Impossible! The thing hidden in that mole made his hair stand on end. There was no mistaking it. Although, it was only a faint outline. He couldn't see the true form of the Dharma in the mole. He could only catch a glimpse of its outline. His eyes were already bloodshot. Then with a poochie sound, Peng Shiren's eyes spat out 2 streams of blood, as if they were meatballs that had been pissed. Then, they quickly recovered under the starlight around them. The monk was amazed by Peng Shiren's means. It was indeed a little scary to be able to repair itself despite Wang Ling's backlash. Back then, when he was trying to trace the source of the royal decree, one of his vases had been destroyed. And now, Tyrant guessed that the thing Peng Shiren saw should be the faint silhouette of a human being born in the primal chaos. Tyrant had a guess in his heart, but he wasn't sure what it was. But looking at Peng Shiren's pale face, he seemed to have recognized the origin of this human silhouette. Why do you have such a thing on you? Peng Shiren was frightened, and the hairs on his body stood up. He was sure that he was not mistaken. Through the mole in the corner of Wang Ling's eye, Peng Shiren felt as if there was another universe hidden inside it. This black mole was like a black hole, attracting his gaze and gradually guiding his spirit, completing a high-speed interstellar travel. And in the center of the universe that this black mole had transformed into, what Peng Shiren saw was the human silhouette born from the chaos, the spirit of the universe. This was what he had seen. A person could actually transform the spirit of the universe into a Dharma idol? But from the looks of it, the spirit of the universe doesn't seem to have fully awakened. If he were to wait for the cosmos spirit to truly awaken, the young man before him might become even more powerful than he was now. Peng Shiren's Adam's apple bobbed. He had always thought that Wang Ling was just a progenitor expert hiding on Earth like a monk. But in the end, Peng Shiren realized that he had underestimated the young man in front of him. If he wanted to kill him, he could only do so now, before he was fully formed. If he were to wait until he matured, he would not be able to defeat him at all. In his hand was Peng Shiren's Milky Way cannon punch. Still accumulating power, he looked at Wang Ling. If you have the ability, wait for me to accumulate power for a while more. Wang Ling shrugged indifferently. He could actually feel that Peng Shiren was very regretful now. She regretted her words back then, forcing him to summon his Dharma. If he did not have the Dharma form, Peng Shiren might have already punched. But after seeing Wang Ling's Dharma idol, Peng Shiren instantly felt that this little bit of power was probably far from enough. So he once again applied to accumulate power. To be honest, he really wanted to slap himself to death. Why did he have to be so eloquent in the midst of a great battle, however? The problem was that even Peng Shiren himself did not expect the youth before him to possess an aspect that was the universe's spirit. Wasn't that what his master had been searching for and giving up on? Are you done? At that moment, Wang Ling stared at Peng Shiren, and his flat voice rang in Peng Shiren's mind. No. Let's wait a little longer. Peng Shiren frowned. His face was completely red from the accumulation of power. Wang Ling was familiar with this state. It was like what Father Wang usually felt when he squatted on the toilet because of constipation. Constipation also required power. In addition to accumulating power, he also had to learn precise calculations. Peng Shiren needed to calculate how much power he needed to accumulate before he could defeat himself. And Father Wang needed to calculate what kind of shape he should take after he finished accumulating power so that the water splashing into the toilet wouldn't splash his butt. In that moment, these two completely different behaviors were strikingly similar to each other. Sure enough, life was full of knowledge. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He counted the time on his fingers, then looked at Peng Shiren and warmly reminded him, "Are you done? You're so annoying. Can't you wait a little longer?" Annoyed by the question, Peng Shiren flipped out on the spot. The monk laughed coldly. With such a bad attitude, I think Ling Zhenren shouldn't wait any longer and just attack. Bald donkey. This is a fight between me and him. Don't get in the way. Hearing the monk's words, Peng Shiren instantly panicked. He was afraid that Wang Ling would attack before he finished accumulating power, so he almost immediately roared. But Wang Ling was silent and didn't say anything. He knew that Peng Shiren was anxious. But he was willing to keep waiting. Even if he died, he wanted Peng Shiren to know why he died. After about another quarter of an hour, when he had memorized pi to more than 10,000 digits, Peng Shiren finally moved. On the other side, Peng Shiren finally responded. I'm coming, Wang Ling. It's finally starting. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He had never felt that fighting with someone could actually be so torturous. He had waited long enough for this punch. He hoped that Peng Shiren could really hurt him, even if it was just a scratch on his skin. After all, Wang Ling had never had a scratch on his skin since he was a child. When he fell, the surroundings would shake, and even the spirit of the earth would tremble. Wang Ling, you actually let me accumulate power for so long. I'm telling you, this will be the most regretful decision you'll ever make in your life. At that moment, Peng Shiren suddenly grit his teeth. Die! The next moment, he threw a punch. This was the Milky Way cannon fist cannon, which he had been accumulating power for nearly half an hour. Finally, it flew out of his hand. A light wave with a radius as large as the sun blasted straight in Wang Ling's direction. Everything in its path was destroyed, and the planets in its way were directly pierced through, accompanied by the screams of the spirits of the major planets and the roar of the planet's core explosion. The light of the cannon version of the Milky Way fist instantly flew in front of Wang Ling. Boom! In the end, This cannon accurately bombarded Wang Ling. There was a huge explosion where Wang Ling was. The terrifying impact of the Milky Way fist's light wave shook the universe, and the resulting blast wave caused the surrounding planets to move several light years away. This scene was like a series of chain reactions when the cue of a billiard ball hit the billiard ball. The monk was amazed by the scene. Success! Peng Shiren was pleasantly surprised.
However, he had only been happy for less than 3 seconds when the unscathed figure of the youngster gradually appeared in front of him amid the devastating light of the explosion.
No way! Sweat beads the size of beans covered Peng Shiren's face almost instantly.
This punch, which he had been accumulating power for half an hour. In the end, the youngster in front of him was actually unscathed.
Not bad. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and rubbed his hair with his index finger. Under Peng Shiren's cannon version of the Milky Way fist, his hair had curled up. Peng Shiren. He had given him a perm. In all these years, Wang Ling had never permed his hair. Because his hair was too hard, he couldn't do it at all. And now, he was even more reluctant to kill Peng Shiren. Wang Ling felt that Peng Shiren had the potential to be Tony's teacher. Chapter 1436. Curly hair? That was a pretty good experience. After the cannon version of the Galaxy Fist, Wang Ling's hair became curly with a very natural curve. Furthermore, this curl should be able to last for a while. After all, this was an attack that Peng Shiren had accumulated strength for 30 minutes. If Wang Ling's hair reverted to its normal hairstyle in a few seconds, that would be too disrespectful to Peng Shiren. At the very least, the accumulated energy from the Galaxy Fist had curled his hair. In Wang Ling's view, Peng Shiren's strength wasn't too bad. But for it to kill Wang Ling, Peng Shiren was probably still a little lacking. When Wang Ling looked at Peng Shiren again, he saw that Peng Shiren's nervous expression had changed. It had been pale white at first, but now it had turned a dark purple. His face was full of doubt that was beyond comprehension. "You, what realm on earth are you?" Wang Ling shook his head. To be honest, he didn't know either. The title of Immortal King wasn't bad, but that was what the monk had said. Currently, there was no clear concept of what realm came after the Ancestor Realm. Back then on Ninefold Star, where the domain of the gods was located, Tao Ancestor Wang, the founder of Ninefold Star, had also been called Immortal King by some people. However, this title seemed too big, and Tao Ancestor Wang hadn't accepted it. Now, the question had fallen back on Wang Ling. So, did he deserve it? Wang Ling felt that perhaps he was also a little lacking. "What on earth is your relationship with my Shifu?" Peng Shiren stared at Wang Ling. The last person who had made him feel so oppressed was his Shifu Tao Ancestor Wang. "Shiren, you know very well. Ling Zhenren and Tao Ancestor Wang have nothing to do with each other." At that moment the monk interjected. At first, this humble monk also suspected it, but later I realized that the difference between them is very obvious. This was the monk's euphemistic way of putting it. The most obvious difference was, of course, the difference in strength. The heavenly Tao magic cube was something that Tao Ancestor Wang had painstakingly created, but in Wang Ling's hands, it was nothing more than a casual pinch. This gap was so big that it was like hundreds of millions of Mariana Trenches separating them. It was impossible to cross. Apart from that, the most obvious point, which had just been revealed, was the problem with Wang Ling's Dharma idol. Tao Ancestor Wang's Dharmic idol was a creature named Ho. It had a pair of feet on its head and wide wings. Normally, it was in human form, and it wore a set of metal armor that was covered in heavenly Tao runes. It towered between heaven and earth, hundreds of millions of zhang tall. The monk had only seen it once. At that time, it gave monk Jin Deng a great shock. However, the bigger the Dharma idol, the stronger it would be. So when it came to Wang Ling's Dharma idol, Wang Ling didn't care. Then there was no need for further discussion. The spirit of the universe. It was nothing more than a silhouette that resembled a human silhouette. One couldn't even see its face clearly, but that oppressive feeling was enough to make one kneel down in submission just by looking at it. This was a powerful creature known as the center of the universe. An existence that controlled an entire universe. An existence that was the spirit of all the planets. At that moment, hearing monk Jin Deng's astonished voice, Wang Ling looked at him and asked telepathically, "So is he very strong?" Monk Jin Deng, Of course, Wang Ling. "Oh, In fact, if the monk and Peng Shiren hadn't been secretly shocked, Wang Ling really wouldn't have known that his Dharma idol was the spirit of the universe. This was the first time Wang Ling had heard of this. Previously, he had seen other people's Dharma idols, which were big and mighty. His Dharma idol was just a humanoid creature, and Wang Ling felt that he couldn't show it off. In the end, the truth was finally revealed today. So the current situation. All three of them were shocked. Peng Shiren was shocked because he didn't know where Wang Ling came from. The monk was shocked because Wang Ling actually didn't know anything about his Dharma idol. And Wang Ling was shocked because it turned out that this Dharma idol, which he had always regarded as beneath him, was actually so strong. This person, what the hell is going on? Now, seeing Wang Ling's expression of sudden realization, as if he had just learned what the spirit of the universe was, Peng Shiren's face was full of panic and confusion, and the corners of his mouth twitched continuously. Was this the legendary powerhouse? So strong that he didn't even know how strong he was? Without further ado, when Wang Ling raised his hand at Peng Shiren, the black mole at the corner of his eye had already disappeared. He withdrew his Dharma idol of his own accord. The main thing was that he was worried that he would accidentally kill Peng Shiren. To deal with Peng Shiren, he didn't need to use the power of his Dharma idol. Seeing Wang Ling raise his arm at him, Peng Shiren was also terrified. If I die, I'll definitely drag you down with me. Wang Ling actually still had a lot of things he wanted to ask Peng Shiren. He didn't have any intention of directly erasing him. Of course. He could do it whenever he wanted. Maybe you're not afraid of me, but you can't protect everyone around you. At that moment, Peng Shiren stared at Wang Ling, his brain working at top speed as he prepared to shoot his mouth off. The monk knew that Peng Shiren was deliberately stalling for time. Very quickly, Peng Shiren's actions confirmed the monk's thoughts. The outcome of my battle with you isn't the key. In the next moment, Peng Shiren's expression suddenly changed. Because he had obtained the Rubik's Cube. Just now, when he had been fighting with the monk, Peng Shiren had secretly sent a clone to Earth to take the Rubik's Cube away. Peng Shiren was secretly delighted. Because this heavenly Tao Rubik's Cube actually looked very new. As if it was brand new. The monk gritted his teeth. Do you know what you're doing? If you release that sealed person, you'll be doomed eternally. I know very well what I'm doing. Also, after this test, I have a deeper understanding of your and Wang Ling's strength. If I have the power of that sealed person and we join hands, we might be able to fight on equal footing. Or even overflow. Peng Shiren's lips curled up. Then, his figure started to fade. Seeing this, Wang Ling pretended to panic and hurriedly reached out to grab him. 5 fingers that blotted out the sky came crashing down. When they came down, Peng Shiren's entire body had already turned into particles of light, as if he had disintegrated. In this vast universe, Peng Shiren's last words were left behind. You're very strong, but you lack experience, and your reaction is really too slow. My figure can disappear under the starlight, and no one in the universe can catch me. See you next time. Then Wang Ling withdrew his hand. The expression on his face was very calm. Zhenren, you deliberately spared his life, and even pretended to have made a mistake so that you couldn't catch him. It looks like the fish has taken the bait. The monk bowed to Wang Ling. He couldn't help chuckling in his heart, thinking that Peng Shiren would lose sooner or later because he thought himself clever. Peng Shiren was crafty. When he had used the canon version of the Galaxy Fist earlier, Wang Ling had already noticed that Peng Shiren had sent a clone to Earth to steal the Rubik's Cube. Peng Shiren had predicted that Wang Ling and the monk would focus all their energy on the battle at hand and wouldn't care about anything else. In the end, they had successfully taken the Rubik's Cube away. But he hadn't expected Peng Shiren to bring it back as part of Wang Ling's plan. Wang Ling had predicted Peng Shiren's actions. Zhenren, Peng Shiren is crafty. If we don't go after him right now, I'm afraid he'll notice that something has changed with the Rubik's Cube, the monk said at that moment on the side. Wang Ling nodded. Next, it was time to show off his acting skills. Peng Shiren claimed that no one in the universe could catch him. Wang Ling could only smile at this confidence. The reason why he hadn't set off right now wasn't because he really couldn't catch Peng Shiren. It was because he felt that Peng Shiren was slipping too slowly. So Peng Shiren deliberately ran first. Chapter 1437. At the same time, In Wang Ling's inner world, Lotus Sun looked around. Number 60 High School was like an isolated island in this huge world, and at first glance looked a little deserted. For some reason, the school had clearly been renovated and remodeled. Number 60 High School here still looked like an old school, with the dilapidated stone carvings at the main entrance and the old but still standing palm trees next to the teaching buildings. Everything gave off a very familiar feeling. The screen in the school square was playing the result of the fight between Wang Ling and Peng Shiren in real time. Sitting on a bench under a tree, the girl could see the big screen from this angle. When she saw Wang Ling, whose hair had been permed by Peng Shiren's fist, she couldn't help blushing a little. Suddenly, she had the sudden urge to rub Wang Ling's hair. Curly Hair's classmate Wang Ling was also very cute. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Wang Ying asked. He had been with Lotus Sun the entire time, but this didn't affect Wang Ying's real body's battle in the Sword King world, because it was just a split body that was with Lotus Sunday.
Can I go in?
Lotus Sun asked.
Of course.
Wang Ying nodded.
Throughout the fight, she had been sitting obediently on the bench, staring fixedly at the various scenes on the screen. It was as if she was afraid of missing out on any details.
"Weren't you worried all this time whether Lord Ling could beat him?"
When the cannon version of the Galaxy Fist hit him, "I saw you so nervous that you clutched your skirt."
Wang Ying couldn't help laughing. "You should be relieved to see the current situation. Why don't you go in and take a look?"
How could I?
Lotus Sun's face was boiling hot. Wang Ying couldn't help laughing at her immature reaction.
"Forget it. I won't tease you anymore. There's no point in teasing you. Inger is far more interesting."
Lotus Sun was curious.
"Why do you always?" She resists and struggles, and the more she resists, the more excited I get.
"You're too gentle, not at all like Inger, so boring," Wang Ying replied.
Although he was just a split body, there was no essential difference between the split body and the original body, and the thoughts in his head were the same.
"But that's not right. Why do you look like you know everything? You're clearly just shadows." Lotus Sun asked the question she had always wanted to ask. He was right.
Wang Ying and Sun Yinger were essentially their shadows, but for some reason, Lotus Sun always felt that both of them were a little too mature. Those void creatures have lived for too long. She is the Lord of the Void, and all the void creatures share their memories. It's normal for her to become an old driver.
What about you, CEO Ing? Didn't I absorb her ability? I didn't want it to be like this. Wang Ying shrugged. So you're blaming me? At this time, the girl looked at the teaching building in front of her.
Is the layout inside the same as number 60 old schools? Why don't you go and take a look and you'll know?
Wang Ying kept him guessing. Why was number 60 old school the only one left in the inner world? Actually, Wang Ying could guess it just by guessing. Wang Ling's conclusion was that he was lazy and couldn't be bothered to rebuild his model. If Immortal Jin Yuan, a construction maniac who was passionate about creating my world, was here, the core world would definitely be built to perfection. However, to Wang Ying, this conclusion was purely an excuse. There was no other way. His master was too dull. Sure enough, Inga was right. You're a bad guy. She got up and straightened her skirt and messy thoughts. Then, she looked at Wang Ying next to her and nodded. Then let's go take a look. On the other side, Wang Ling reckoned that it was about time since Peng Shiren had escaped for some time. The other party was moving extremely fast, and had already put a distance of almost 10 billion light-years between them. Zhenren, aren't you going to move? The monk asked on the side. To be honest, this was a little too far, and he felt that it would be a little difficult to catch up. At least, he probably wouldn't be able to. But after all, the person Peng Shiren was dealing with was Wang Ling, so the monk still had some expectations. And Wang Ling really didn't disappoint him. The youngster in front of him suddenly spread open his well-defined fingers and grabbed in one direction. At that moment, he was like an emissary who had unveiled the prelude to the universe. Brilliant light gathered in his palm, and an immortal aura emanated from it. The monk looked at this scene in astonishment. He was astonished when he saw the ball of light condensing in Wang Ling's palm. Primal Chaos Tribulation Light. This was a natural phenomenon that occurred when the energy was too great and resonated with chaos. In essence, it was a self-defense mechanism in the universe. When the Primal Chaos Tribulation Light appeared, it would collide with something with too much energy and counteract it. But it was clear that the primal chaos tribulation light couldn't erase Wang Ling. Instead, the primal chaos tribulation light that had appeared was being toyed with by Wang Ling at this moment. He's actually using the naturally produced primal chaos tribulation light to build a tunnel that spans 10 billion light years. The monk was extremely astonished. He hadn't expected such a miraculous operation to exist. Because under normal circumstances, ordinary spirit power couldn't complete a huge project like building a tunnel that spanned 10 billion light years. But Wang Ling had actually used his own spirit power to stimulate the universe to produce a self-defense, primal chaos tribulation light, which he then used for his own purposes. It was all done in the blink of an eye. Wang Ling just raised his hand lightly, and the tunnel was already complete. Then, his figure moved, and he directly stepped into the tunnel ahead. Tyrant followed closely behind. He couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. At that moment, Peng Shiren, who thought he had already escaped far away, was immensely pleased with himself. He estimated that he was already more than 10 billion light-years away, and his aura was perfectly concealed by the starlight. Whether it was Wang Ling or the monk, no matter how capable they were, it was impossible for them to find trouble with him. Now, he just needed to send back the Rubik's Cube in his hand, and his mission this time would be considered a success. But it wasn't that Peng Shiren didn't have his doubts. He felt that his mission this time had gone a little too smoothly. Could it be that the Rubik's Cube was a trick? Peng Shiren frowned and was about to take out the Rubik's Cube to take a closer look. But at that moment, he suddenly felt a great sense of oppression descend on him from behind. Turning his head, Peng Shiren's gaze met Wang Ling's dead fish eyes a light year away. Peng Shiren couldn't help swearing on the spot. F***K. He can even chase me like this? Although he was utterly shocked by Wang Ling's pursuit, Peng Shiren felt a lot more at ease at this moment. Judging from the other party's relentless pursuit, there shouldn't be any problem with the Rubik's Cube. Otherwise, why would it be chasing him so nervously? What a troublesome guy! Peng Shiren grit his teeth and sped up again. At the moment, he was roughly a light year away from Wang Ling. At that moment, Wang Ling's hand was also condensing starlight, inspired by Peng Shiren's galaxy fist.
Zhenren, you want to?
The monk was stupefied as he could roughly guess what Wang Ling wanted to do. Right now, Wang Ling was using starlight to condense a large blade that was about a light year long. Chapter 1438. Ling Zhenren. Has he started creating new spells again?
Following behind Wang Ling, the monk felt that the scene was a little familiar when he saw Wang Ling condensing starlight in one hand.
He instantly knew that Wang Ling must have gotten some inspiration from Peng Shiren to come up with a brand new skill. The monk felt like he was just a bystander now, but even so, being able to quietly watch and learn from Wang Ling's side was already a huge gain for the monk. In the inn, Loopy Toad and Wang Ying stared at the scene in front of them, and Loopy Toad exclaimed repeatedly, "He created another new spell? As expected of him. But what should this move be called?" "Star Sword Technique, Profound, Light Years," answered Wang Ying on the side. "Why does it have such a Chunibu name?" The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. "I didn't come up with it. It was BattleSect's commentary system," said Wang Ying. BattleSect now had an internally developed sect app, and the BattleSect commentary system was one of its functions. This was the commentary system Wang Ming had invented, which was an artificial intelligence AI based on Wang Ling's brain data. When it encountered a problem it couldn't understand, it could simulate Wang Ling's thinking and explain all kinds of Wang Ling's miraculous abilities in real time. Why is there such a thing? It's a newly developed app. Even among the core members, only a small number of people are qualified for internal testing, said Wang Ying. He took out his phone and put it in front of Loopy Toad. Sure enough, Loopy Toad saw a long list of information on the screen. Apart from the full name, this newly developed spell actually also had a short name. Loopy Toad felt that it was much better than the full name. Spell abbreviation, Light Years Away, Casting Principle. By condensing a large amount of the power of starlight, a tangible weapon can be created. However, because the power of starlight is difficult to condense, this move can only be explained using the principles of Wang Ling's science, and cannot be explained using conventional cultivation science. Spellcaster's suggested level. Dear, here's my suggestion. It's best if it's at the max level. Casting difficulty. For Wang Ling including Wang Ying, 1 star, for other people 10 stars. Note, when the difficulty reaches 10 stars, it's not recommended to learn this spell, because you won't be able to master it. Spell power. Has destructive power. Magic advantage. Comes with many passive skills. 1. Comes with a halo that repels the weak. It can accurately lock onto the enemy and only attack the target without harming the innocent. Earth no longer needs to be afraid. 2. 100% critical strike, and the critical strike damage stacks according to the number of light years formed. 1 light year equals 1 times the effect. 3. Unstoppable effect. The casting process cannot be interrupted by any means other than the caster cancelling it. During the casting process, a powerful starlight barrier would form around the caster to block all kinds of flying spells and tools. 4. Bachelor's Rage. This skill is a limited passive ability. It is only effective on 520 days. If the target is locked on, there will be an additional burning effect. Loopy Toad was stunned. It had to be said that this war sect commentary system was quite strong. Moreover, there was a hint of coquettishness in his forcefulness. It could only be said that as expected of software developed by Wang Ming, Wang Ying nodded. There's nothing particularly exaggerated about it. It's quite realistic. This light years away had a lot of advantages, but its disadvantage was that it was too difficult. It was likely that apart from the two of them, no one else in the world could do it. At that moment, Loopy Toad and Wang Ying could see the starlight condensing in Wang Ling's right hand as it swiftly extended forward at a speed invisible to the naked eye. The starlight sword which Wang Ling had condensed during the chase seemed to have fallen from the sky. Starlight radiated in all directions and densely covered in runes. It contained a terrifying power that could destroy everything. As the monk looked at the explanation in the war sect commentary system, he marveled at this method in his heart. Condensing starlight wasn't difficult for the monk himself. But the difficulty was that he couldn't gather the power of so much starlight in such a short period of time like Wang Ling could. Therefore, light years away itself was also a type of spell that could accumulate power. But the problem was that Wang Ling was accumulating power too quickly. Compared with Peng Shiren's Galaxy Fist, Wang Ling was who knew how many times faster. Peng Shiren was stupefied. Although he and Wang Ling were in the same universe. But it seemed like they weren't playing the same game. It felt like they were both clearly in Summoner's Canyon. Peng Shiren was playing a normal match, while Wang Ling was playing infinite firepower. Even the skill cooldowns were different. How the F***K was he supposed to play? As he moved swiftly, Peng Shiren felt the coldness on the back of his neck become more and more pronounced. Before Wang Ling's light years away had finished, it was as if that powerful aura had already turned into a knife against Wang Ling's neck. This wasn't good. It looked like the other party really wanted to kill him. Peng Shiren frowned deeply. He started to regret saying that he was invincible in the universe. Because he realized that Wang Ling's existence was a F***king bug. But when all was said and done, Wang Ling was Dao ancestor Wang's only disciple. It wasn't that Peng Shiren hadn't thought about how he could survive if his life was in danger. Thus, just as Wang Ling's starlight sword was about to pierce Peng Shiren practically gritted his teeth and took out something. An ancient stone? Wang Ling frowned when he noticed a round stone the size of a cabbage which emitted a black light. It had a smooth surface, and was glowing with a black light. He tried to peer into it with his king's eye, but it was blocked by the black light emitted by the round stone. He actually couldn't see what was inside? Wang Ling was astonished. This was something he had never seen before. His king's eye could be said to be capable of anything, although there was still a lot of room for improvement. But in theory, there shouldn't be anything in this universe that the king's eye couldn't see through. At that moment, the king's eye's line of sight was actually blocked by the black light of this round ancient stone. Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued. Could it be that there was something in this ancient stone that could restrict his power? Wang Ling, I didn't want to take this out so easily. But if you insist on forcing me, don't blame me for being impolite. If you want to kill me, at worst we'll just die together. At that moment, Peng Shiren was manipulating the ancient stone. He held it high above his head with just one hand. The instant Wang Ling's starlight sword stabbed at it, the body of the sword was directly affected by the power of the ancient stone. As if it had been split into two by the sea, it evaded Peng Shiren and flew past him from both sides.
Pooh!
At that moment, Peng Shiren, who was holding the ancient stone high, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Wang Ling? ? He clearly hadn't stabbed Peng Shiren. How could this be a scam?
No, Zhenren, it's the stone.
Monk Golden Lamp frowned as he analyzed on the side. He thought that the real reason Peng Shiren had spat out blood wasn't because of Wang Ling's light years away. Instead, it was purely because of this strange ancient stone's influence. This was also why Peng Shiren hadn't wanted to use it in the first place. There seemed to be something magical in the ancient stone, which was extremely harmful to the body, like the radiation of rare metals. Every second that Peng Shiren held the stone, hundreds of millions of cells in his body died.
Interesting.
Wang Ling stared at the round stone indifferently and cancelled the light years away spell. It wasn't because he was afraid, but because he was worried that he might accidentally damage the ancient stone. The ancient stone wasn't very big. Although there seemed to be something on it that could restrict Wang Ling's power, he wasn't using his full strength yet. If he got serious, it would be hard for Peng Shiren to resist even with the power of the ancient stone. After all, the stone itself was too small. Furthermore, the substance in the ancient stone that could restrict Wang Ling's power hadn't been purified, so it had a limited effect on his power. So what he was curious about now was, where on earth had Peng Shiren obtained this ancient stone? In this vast universe, were there any other stones of the same type that existed? Chapter 1439. Under the cover of the ancient stone, Peng Shiren quickly retreated. The ancient stone's radiation backlash was not light. His face was pale, and he felt like his kidney was hurting. When he held onto the ancient stone, billions of cells in his body died every second. It was just like those stinky tissues that he had used all those years ago that had returned to the trash can. Wang Ling didn't give chase. In any case, he hadn't intended to kill Peng Shiren from the beginning. Originally, this chase was only to dispel Peng Shiren's concerns about the magic cube. He never imagined that he would actually gain a new pleasant surprise. I didn't expect him to have such a divine item on him. However, even I don't know what it is. 9 out of 10. It's something from the infinite Milky Way. Monk Golden Lamp sighed with emotion. From Peng Shiren's experience of faking his death for so many years, Peng Shiren had always been hiding in the infinite Milky Way. He was much more familiar with the terrain there than Tyrant. There was an 80% to 90% chance that Peng Shiren had unearthed this mystical black stone in the infinite Milky Way. Even the power of the king's eye couldn't penetrate that circle of black light, so naturally, the monk's swastika seal couldn't see through it. However, the infinite galaxy was too big. Even if it was Wang Ling, it wouldn't be easy for him to pinpoint the source of this ancient stone when he knew nothing about it. Therefore, Peng Shiren had to stay alive. He might be the only person who knew the whereabouts of the ancient stone. In the depths of the boundless Milky Way, on a planet shrouded in darkness, Peng Shiren arrived in a sorry state with a pale face. The evil eyes hidden in the darkness suddenly opened when they sensed Peng Shiren's aura.
Are you injured?
Because the battle was too far away, the owner of the evil eye did not see what had happened. However, the fact that Peng Shiren was injured still made him slightly surprised. Because this was different from what he had expected. When he saw Peng Shiren again, he could clearly sense that Peng Shiren had aged a lot. This was a sign of aging caused by the death of too many cells.
It doesn't matter.
I can use the starlight to heal myself. Peng Shiren took a few deep breaths. His entire body was shrouded in starlight. The blue spirit light seeped into his body through his pores, repairing the damaged cells in his body. His wrinkled skin gradually regained its youthful luster. Looks like you used the power of that ancient stone. I underestimated the opponent's combat power. He's stronger than I thought. If we had made sufficient preparations, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Peng Shiren coughed twice. Come to think of it, it wasn't Wang Ling who had caused his injuries, but the backlash from this mysterious ancient stone. It was just an item that he had obtained by chance. Even he himself hadn't studied the origins of this ancient stone, but he didn't expect that it would save his life at a critical moment. The owner of the evil eye was silent for a moment. It's best if you don't use this ancient stone carelessly. Otherwise, there's a risk of your realm regressing. I know. Peng Shiren nodded. But the operation this time was quite successful. I have successfully brought back the Rubik's Cube from Earth. I just don't know how the Sword King Realm's attack is going. The Sword King World's attack was in truth a feint. Their true goal was to take the 9th magic cube. Just as you said, the enemy's combat strength is indeed stronger than we imagined. Just the peach wood sword from the Sword King realm was not easy to deal with. He has also accepted Lang Ming as his disciple. If we want to obtain this sacrificial offering, I'm afraid we'll have to wait until I'm unsealed before we can make preparations.
The owner of the evil eye harumphed.
To unlock the seal here, I need to collect at least 5 old Rubik's Cubes. Now, the Rubik's Cube has been assembled. Peng Shiren opened his hand and presented the last Rubik's Cube that he had just obtained from Earth. Then, the golden Rubik's Cube quickly sank into the dark planet in front of him.
All right. The owner of the evil eye nodded.
A few seconds later, the owner of the evil eye said doubtfully, "Something's wrong." "What's wrong?"
Peng Shiren was puzzled.
"This isn't the old Rubik's Cube," said the evil eye's owner. "Isn't it because they look well maintained?" Peng Shiren was shocked. If this wasn't the old Rubik's Cube, then where did this Rubik's Cube come from?
Definitely not.
The owner of the evil eye said, "I have been dealing with this Tiandao Rubik's Cube for more than a day or two. I know the process of making the old Rubik's Cube very well." He was sure that it wasn't the taste inside. This Rubik's Cube was a new creation. It seems that someone created a new batch of Rubik's Cubes. A new creation. Think about it. Right now, there are exactly 9 Rubik's Cubes in their hands and ours. If all 9 Rubik's Cubes were taken away, there would definitely be a riot in the universe's chaos. However, such a riot didn't happen. Therefore, the other party must have secretly replaced all these Rubik's Cubes with new ones. The owner of the evil eye said, "From the beginning, their goal wasn't to snatch the Rubik's Cubes, but to replace them with new ones." Peng Shiren was shocked. They could actually create so many new Rubik's Cubes in such a short period of time? This Heavenly Tao Rubik's Cube wasn't King Plasticine. The owner of the evil eye said, "If this 9th Rubik's Cube is new, then it means that the old one is already in their hands." Peng Shiren said, "But then, doesn't that mean that we're still missing one?" "It doesn't matter. That doesn't stop me from coming out."
The owner of the evil eye chuckled.
Although I don't know what method the other party used to create these new Rubik's Cubes, what we can be sure of is that the seal Tao ancestor placed on me back then has already loosened. Although these new Rubik's Cubes can replace the old Rubik's Cubes and stabilize the chaos, the Tao ancestor didn't deliberately set up a restriction inside. What do you mean? The other party made a mistake in their calculations. Furthermore, the spirit power stored in the new Rubik's Cube is stronger than that of the old one. Originally, I needed the power of at least 5 old Rubik's Cubes to loosen the seal, but now, I just need to swallow this new Rubik's Cube. Elsewhere, after Wang Ling returned to Sword King World, the invasion of the Chaos Facehuggers had basically been dealt with. Wang Ying and Jing Bai were organized and orderly, and had swept away all the invading creatures. Inside the inn, Wang Ling let Lotus Sun out of his inner world. He felt that Lotus Sun's face was a little red, and he wondered what on earth the girl had seen in his inner world. His inner world hadn't been built yet, and there was only number 60 high school, which was like an isolated island. Wang Ling didn't think there was anything to see. Classmate Wang Ling. At that moment, Lotus Sun plucked up her courage and took the initiative to call out to Wang Ling. She stepped forward and pressed down on his shoulder to stop him from moving. "It's the weekend. Do you want to go to Old Street with me?" Chapter 1440. Lotus Sun put her hand on Wang Ling's shoulder. She knew him too well, and was afraid that if she spoke halfway, he would find a loophole and run away. Thus, she mustered up her courage and chose to face him head-on. This resulted in the two of them being very close to each other. If there was a wall behind them and she stretched her hand back a little more, it would look like she was hammering Wang Ling against the wall. At that moment, the girl's thoughts ran wild, and her cheeks flushed red. She hurriedly let go of her hand and hid it behind her back. "Actually, we're just going to pick up some local customs. It's not just the two of us. I've also invited Super Chen, Hero Gua and Li Yuiwe." She was too afraid that Wang Ling would refuse her, so she chose to take a step back. "Actually, It was mainly for Wang Ling's sake. If everyone went together, it wouldn't be so awkward. Furthermore, even if it was a group activity, they should still be able to find some time to be alone. As for why she had chosen Super Chen, Hero Guo and Li Yueyue, this was naturally within her consideration. These three people might look like third wheels, but they still had good eyesight.
The wait for Wang Ling's reply seemed very long.
It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that 10 or so seconds felt like years. Wang Ling actually really wanted to read the girl's mind and see what she had seen in his inner world. But later, he felt that this was a little like a peeping Tom and was very inappropriate, so he gave up on the idea. He looked fixedly at the girl. After hearing Lotus Sun's request, he was thinking about how to refuse. Unfortunately, Lotus Sun now knew too much about him. Ordinary reasons, such as not finishing his homework, being invited by someone else, or being sick, would never happen to him. While he was silent, Wang Ling heard Lotus Sun mention Super Chen, Hero Guo and Li Yueyue. His heart suddenly relaxed quite a bit. It could be said that Lotus Sun's move had been very successful. She had accurately predicted Wang Ling's thoughts. For Wang Ling, it would indeed be easier for him to accept going out with only his acquaintances.
Okay.
Thus, looking at the expectant girl in front of him, Wang Ling nodded and agreed. There was only one ancient cultivation culture street in Songhai City, and there was also an old crispy noodle snack shop on it. Wang Ling felt that going there occasionally wasn't a bad idea. He actually agreed.
Lotus Sun raised her head with an expression of pleasant surprise.
She found that she was gradually beginning to understand how to deal with Wang Ling. When dealing with this kind of blockhead, being too hasty would only spoil things. As expected, it had to be done bit by bit. She suppressed the ecstasy in her heart and did her best not to make it too obvious. Then, classmate Wang Ling, let's meet at the school gate this weekend.
Let's go together.
Wang Ling looked at her with a helpless expression on his face. Thought steal was a passive skill. Although the small nano earplugs Wang Ming had developed had the ability to block out other people's thoughts, if they were too close, it was still very easy to hear voices. For example, right now, Wang Ling's head was filled with the girl's ha-ha-ha laughter. Lotus Sun was laughing too loudly in her heart. He didn't know if it was because he was too excited. That night, in the final match of the Sword Arena, Lotus Sun instantly defeated Sword Spirit, who was in first place in the other group. Although this outcome was not unexpected, no one knew why this human girl would end the battle so quickly as if she had been injected with chicken blood. The reason was very simple. Because of the weekend trip to the old street, Lotus Sun actually hadn't informed Super Chen, Hero Guo and Li Yueyue yet. She was waiting to go back to Earth to lay out a battle plan. When she got home that night, Lotus Sun looked for Li Yueyue first.
What?
Go to the old street together? With Super Chen, Hero Guo and Wang Ling? Li Yueyue was dazed for a few seconds when she heard Lotus Sun's invitation. At first, she didn't understand why this girl insisted on bringing the three of them along. But very quickly, Li Yueyue reacted. I get it. You're afraid that you'll be rejected if you ask Wang Ling out alone, right? That's why you invited us.
You know too much.
Lotus Sun smiled bitterly. You clearly don't have a boyfriend. How can you know so much?
Yes.
Just watch a few more romance dramas. You'll always be able to come up with a plan. Li Yueyue smiled. Don't worry, I'll help send Super Chen and Hero Guo away after we get there and create opportunities for you.
Thank you so much.
Lotus Sun sighed. She regretted not getting to know Li Yueyue earlier last semester. If it wasn't for the National Body Technique competition on 9 Dragon Mountain this time, she would have almost missed this godly assist. One down. After contacting Li Yueyue, Lotus Sun contacted Super Chen and Hero Guo. After waiting for 10 minutes or so, no one replied. She looked at the time. It was now 10 o'clock in the evening. Based on their habits, this should be the time for them to play games.
What now?
Should we ask them tomorrow? Sun Yinger was very curious about what Lotus Sun would do.
No.
Lotus Sun shook her head. As the saying went, plans couldn't keep up with changes. Setting a time early was better than anything else. I remember that the game they've been playing recently is called Public Connection? Lotus Sun suddenly remembered. This was the game that Super Chen and Hero Guo had been enjoying these days. Every day in class, they would secretly hang out, and Old Pan had almost confiscated their phones several times. Lotus Sun defined it as a large-scale game to collect and raise beautiful girls. There was no other way. At that moment, Lotus Sun sighed.
I'll have to go snipe them myself.
You don't know which server they're on, Sun Yinger said. I don't need to know, just take first place in all of them. Lotus Sun had a kind look in her eyes. It only took about half an hour. Lotus Sun took first place on a total of 68 servers. She had asked Zhang Xiaoche to take back most of the accounts. Sun Yinger was stupefied. Her family's Rongrong was a proper money user. Sure enough, after this, Super Chen and Hero Gua immediately responded. They saw the 3-person group chat that Lotus Sun had set up, and then sent screenshots of the ranking to her one after another, asking her for details. Lotus Sun, is the number 1 ID called the leader of the Grey Sect yours?
Yes,
Lotus Sun replied. You two aren't replying to my messages, so I can only look for you in the game. But you took first place on all 68 servers. Super Chen and Hero Gua were stupefied. Because I don't know where you are. It's too troublesome to ask one by one. So in order for us to accompany you and Lingzi to Old Street this weekend, if you agree, all 68 servers will belong to you. Half is just right. Heh. Do you think we're the kind of people who sell our souls for money? That's right. We are. Then, see you this weekend. Actually, there's one more thing, Lotus Sun said at that moment. Don't worry, we both understand. Super Chen chuckled. It's just creating opportunities. We'll definitely listen to Boss Sun's arrangements. Also, I have coupons for hotels here, if you need them.
No need.
Lotus Sun immediately refused. She felt that Super Chen was thinking too much. This was only the beginning. And even if they went, they didn't need coupons. In any case, the hotels on Old Street were all owned by her family. But at the same time, the girl was actually a little curious about what would really happen this weekend. After all, Super Chen's blessed mouth was a little scary. Chapter 1441. With everything ready, the next thing Lotus Sun had to do that night was naturally to choose a set of decent clothes suitable for a weekend outing. Sun Yinger saw that there were already a lot of styles in the girl's wardrobe, many of which were global limited editions created by famous designers. She was a little puzzled by Lotus Sun's choice of clothes in the shop in the middle of the night. Sun Yinger now understood why every time a good-looking new skin was released for a character in a game, a bunch of people would throw everything they had to buy it. Sure enough, inspiration came from life. The benefits of installing a skin function in a game were indeed huge. A game developer might only spend a few thousand yuan to design a skin, and after it was put on sale at 5 yuan, it could sell hundreds of millions of copies. The most important thing was that everyone who bought the skin felt that it was worth the money. It was simply too real. Rong, you already have so many clothes. Any one of them will be dazzling on the street. Sun Yinger said helplessly as she sat next to Lotus Sun and looked at the girl who was picking out clothes. These clothes are too eye-catching. Classmate Wang Ling probably won't like them, so it's better to buy some new ones, Lotus Sun replied. The clothes she had picked out this time were all from small brands. Although they weren't as famous as the ones in her wardrobe, given the current situation, it was fine as long as they looked good. Sun Yinger pursed her lips. She didn't know if she should complain in her heart. In any case, Super Chen and the others would be going with her. Wouldn't it be fine if everyone wore school uniforms? So, this was purely an excuse for her to buy new clothes.
Humph. Women.
Sun Yinger curled her lips slightly and sneered in her heart, her eyes showing that she had seen through everything. Lotus Sun's trip was in fact a big deal for Huaguo Water Curtain Group. After the Shadow Stream incident last time, the old man naturally paid more attention to protecting his precious granddaughter. Buying a lot of new clothes before each trip was actually a very important signal. Old Man Sun very quickly became aware of her travel plan, and called Zhang Xiaoche that very night. It seems that Rong is going out. Do you know where she's going? Eldest miss, did she buy new clothes again?
That's right.
Old Man Sun nodded. But this time, I still don't know where she wants to go. That's strange. Zhang Xiaoche frowned. In the past, First Miss would always report in advance when she went out. Maybe Rong doesn't want to be too high profile this time. After all, There are a lot of security personnel and cars accompanying her every time she goes out. I've been thinking about it recently, and it does feel a little like swaggering through the city. It's like directly telling those who are plotting against Rongrong that Rongrong is traveling and that they should quickly come and assassinate him, Sunny Yuan said. In fact, during this period of time, Old Man Sun had indeed been reflecting on his past actions. After all, there were still a lot of people who hated the rich these days. It was easy for some people to attract hatred if they were too high profile. He suddenly felt that Wang Ling's low profile actually had its benefits. So here's the problem. In the past, his granddaughter would always report to him before she went out, and he would also prepare all kinds of security measures in advance. But now, Rong was refusing to talk about her trip. Did that mean that she wanted to keep a low profile for this trip? After deducing this, Old Man Sun suddenly felt enlightened. So that's how it is. What did Old Man Sun think of? I'm guessing that Rong might ask classmate Wang Ling out on a date, Old Man Sun said. Jiang Xiaoche was silent, and instantly felt his mood turn sour. It was this guy again. He didn't know what on earth was so good about this Wang Ling young miss actually liked him so much. If Wang Ling could hear Old Man Sun's words at that moment, he would definitely sigh with emotion. It was rare for this old man's deduction to hit the nail on the head. It really wasn't easy. That was the part where he deduced. Everything sounded reasonable. But with the Sun family's inherited imagination, if he continued deducing, it was 100% certain that he would go astray. Thus, after receiving Sunny Yuan's deduction, Jiang Xiaoche spent about 20 minutes investigating this matter. Very quickly he had an idea. Old man, I found it. Young miss is indeed going out on a trip. She's going to the Cultivation Cultural Street. But it's not just classmate Wang Ling. There are also 3 other students from number 60 high school, Jiang Xiaoche replied over the phone. In fact, it wasn't too difficult to get this information. Because young miss had done something very strange before, and that was to ask him to help her recover 68 number 1 game accounts in the entire server. At that time, Jiang Xiaoche had been cautious. Because this type of game absolutely wasn't Lotus Sun's cup of tea. Then, he had followed the clues and traced it back to Super Chen and Hero Gua. After receiving some benefits from Jiang Xiaoche, these 2 unscrupulous guys had straightaway confessed everything. Cultivation Cultural Street? When Old Man Sun heard this place, he was instantly lost in his memories. Sunny Yuan's impression of this ancient street was that it was filled with a rustic and artistic atmosphere. With one look, he could tell that it was a place chosen by a low-key person like classmate Wang Ling. The old man remembered that he had also come to a place like this with his first love back then, and instantly felt that Wang Ling was very much like his younger self, as expected of classmate Wang Ling. Even the place he had chosen to meet was so similar to his own. But old man, if young miss and that Wang Ling are going on a date, why are there 3 other people as well? On the other end of the phone, Jiang Xiaoche heard Old Man Sun sigh with emotion, and instantly knew that the old man was most likely lost in his own narcissism again. He couldn't help wiping his sweat as he asked this question. These words interrupted Old Man Sun's train of thought. Although he still wasn't very clear about the ins and outs of the matter, the old man was still able to rely on his strong reasoning skills to understand everything. There's only one truth, Old Man Sun said. The Cultivation Cultural Street is a priority for people of the arts and literature, and this trip was most likely classmate Wang Ling's decision. The reason why he also invited the other 3 students must be because he wanted to ease the awkwardness of the trip. Also, if everyone goes out in a group, they can take care of each other to a certain extent and avoid danger. Old Man Sun sighed and nodded in satisfaction. As expected of classmate Wang Ling, he's actually so thoughtful. Chapter 1442. Generally speaking, Old Man Sun's reasoning plus reverse deduction equals the correct answer. So after listening to Sunny Yuan's king-like analysis, Jiang Xiaoche instantly knew the ins and outs of the matter. It was definitely eldest miss who had arranged this, and she had most likely chosen the location. Damn it. This Wang Ling. Jiang Xiaoche gnashed his teeth. It was mainly out of jealousy toward Wang Ling. He had never seen her care so much about someone, to the point where she even thought about the other party's interests when they went out. Old master, about the protection of the ancient street this time. Suppressing his jealousy, Jiang Xiaoche spoke as calmly as he could to Old Man's son on the other end of the phone. The protection will continue, but don't make it so grand, Old Man's son said.
Arrange for some people to change into the clothes of the staff of the ancient street and disguise themselves as the staff there to carry out normal activities and protect them in secret.
Old Man's son had been to the ancient street of cultivation culture before, so he was relatively familiar with the situation there. All the staff there were dressed in traditional Chinese clothing, imitating what cultivators from the old era would wear when they went out. The traditional Chinese clothing experience was also one of the more famous activities on the ancient street. All the tourists who came to the ancient street could rent suitable traditional Chinese clothing on the spot, and walk on the ancient street in ancient clothes to experience the folk customs of the old era. It really was a very romantic place. Get some security guards to disguise themselves as staff, right? But what about the original group of workers? Don't worry, the boss of the ancient street is an old friend of mine. I'll give him a call later and ask him to set aside some time for the original staff to rest for 2 days. Of course, we'll pay for their wages for these 2 days. I don't think they'll refuse if we pay them 3 times the usual amount, Old Man's son Su Hong said. Understood. Rest early, old master. Jiang Xiaoche nodded. Then he hung up. A date on the ancient street. Jiang Xiaoche curled his lips. He suddenly had a new plan in mind. A plan that would expose Wang Ling's true nature on the ancient street. After the failure of inviting Old Gray and his men from the loyalty group last time. Based on the previous failure, Jiang Xiaoche had made a new summary. If he wanted to realize his plan, it was far from enough to rely on his own efforts. At times like this, he needed teammates to coordinate from the inside and outside. The first person Jiang Xiaoche thought of was Jiang Yingying. Since Jiang Yingying had transferred schools for Wang Ling's sake, Jiang Xiaoche guessed that this little girl wouldn't want them to be together. Therefore, with the same goal in mind, Jiang Xiaoche felt that this was a good opportunity to cooperate with Jiang Yingying. In order to add Jiang Yingying's WeChat ID, he couldn't find a suitable reason, causing him to waste hundreds of alternate WeChat accounts. However, everything was different now. I have information on Wang Ling. Do you want to know? Jiang Xiaoche sent a friend request to Jiang Yingying. This time, Jiang Yingying approved his request almost immediately. Although he had successfully added her as a friend on WeChat, Jiang Xiaoche still felt that something was wrong. He had failed so many times, but in the end, Wang Ling had passed. It was too hard for him. Jiang Yingying was actually very gloomy. Lotus Sun becoming the leader of the Grey sect was like a fishbone stuck in her throat, and she didn't know what to do. She wasn't the eldest daughter of a rich family, and especially not Marshal Zhong's granddaughter, so she had to pay more attention to her words and actions as well as her daily expenses. Otherwise, it was very likely that she would cause trouble for her grandfather. Jiang Yingying had always been used to dealing with matters of the heart on her own. Before transferring to number 60 High, she had already predicted that Lotus Sun might be her biggest opponent. But now, Jiang Yingying realized a problem. Compared with this eldest daughter, her status wasn't high enough. Without anyone else to help her, it would be very difficult for her to fight Lotus Sun. Jiang Yingying had originally planned to become the leader of the Grey sect, and then use his influence to learn more about Lotus Sun, before finally taking action to deal with her. Unfortunately, it seemed that Lotus Sun had predicted this, and had used money to secure the position of leader of the Grey sect. Jiang Yingying had been defeated in the first round of confrontation. Thus, Jiang Yingying was now in a predicament. Now that she had just arrived at number 60 High and was unfamiliar with the place and the people, it was really too difficult for her to carry out her next plan. Jiang Yingying had originally planned to have Yi Jiang accompany her to number 60 High after he recovered. However, Yi Jiang was still in a semi-autistic state. Although his condition was slightly better than before, he still hadn't completely returned to normal. So when it came down to it, Jiang Yingying realized that she had been too impatient. If Brother Yi was here, it would probably be a lot better. Jiang Yingying lay on her stomach on the bed, her slender legs flapping up and down. She was scratching her head in distress when her phone vibrated. The ID showed that a man called Archer was trying to add her as a friend. The truth was that Jiang Yingying had been feeling harassed recently, as a large number of strange men tried to add her almost every day. Almost out of habit, Jiang Yingying was about to reject the request and blacklist her. But at that moment, a comment about Wang Ling caught her attention. You are Jiang Yingying was curious. After some thought, she agreed to the other party's request. Actually, I'm one of eldest Miss Lotus Sun's pursuers. Jiang Xiaoche sent a mysterious message. I know. Classmate Jiang, you have a good impression of that classmate Wang Ling, right? I just admire his literary talent, don't talk nonsense. The moment Jiang Yingying saw the message, her cheeks instantly turned red. Since that's the case, we can work together. Because our goals are the same. Jiang Xiaoche directly typed. It's like this, I received a piece of information. This weekend, Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the 3/3 Wheels will go to the ancient cultivation cultural street. I know that place. Jiang Yingying quickly replied. As a cultured girl, Jiang Yingying always had a different experience every time she went to that ancient street. At the same time, she was very familiar with the layout of that ancient street, because she had already been there more than once. She had saved up quite a few coupons for the food circles there. Are you sure this information is reliable? But out of caution, Jiang Yingying still asked dubiously. It's 100% reliable. If you don't believe me, you can go to school tomorrow and check it out with either Hero Gua or Super Chen, those 2/3 wheels. They're that Wang Ling's best buddies, said Jiang Xiaoche. All right, if it's true, I agree to work together. Jiang Yingying nodded. Actually, at this point in the conversation, Jiang Yingying already knew that it was most likely true. Jiang Yingying had a deep impression of Super Chen and Hero Gua. She still remembered that in the canteen, that person called Super Chen had directly declared that he was Wang Ling's best buddy. If this person called Archer was just a bored swindler, there was no way he would know so much. So, what do you want me to do? Jiang Yingying asked at that moment. The first step is to disguise ourselves and enter the ancient street together, said Jiang Xiaoche. How do we disguise ourselves? Of course we pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Chapter 1443. As soon as Jiang Xiaoche said this, Jiang Yingying instantly became extremely vigilant. For some reason, she suddenly felt like she had been tricked. Can't we be siblings? Jiang Yingying asked tentatively. She really couldn't accept pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend. She had already given her heart to classmate Wang Ling. Cultivation Culture Ancient Street is a holy land for artistic couples. How can siblings go there? Performing orthopedics? Jiang Xiaoche said with a smile as he sent the message. He found this girl Jiang Yingying more and more interesting. As expected of the girl he loved the most after Lotus Sun. Then, Jiang Yingying typed a string of words, which almost made Jiang Xiaoche choke. But, does this count as cheating? You're not with that Wang Ling right now, how is this considered cheating? Jiang Xiaoche replied quickly. At the same time he face-bombed. He marveled at the girl's brain on the other end of WeChat. Classmate Jiang Yingying, think about it this way. If this succeeds, you might be promoted. Jiang Xiaoche tried his best to instigate her. Of course, it's normal for you to have misgivings about being boyfriend and girlfriend. At worst we can set some rules. During this period of pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend, apart from holding hands and hugging, we won't cross the line. How about that? And we have to hold hands and hug. Of course. This is pretending to be a couple. Holding hands and hugging are the bare minimum, right? Otherwise, wouldn't it be too fake if other people saw through us? Jiang Xiaoche felt that this was the fastest he had ever typed in his life. Just think of it as doing it for Wang Ling, and I'm doing it for Rongrong. In order to obtain happiness, it's actually not a loss to make a sacrifice first. What's the saying again? If I don't go to the ground, who will? It could only be said that Jiang Xiaoche was indeed Jiang Xiaoche. As the Chief Secretary General of Huagua Water Curtain Group and a senior employee who was highly regarded by Old Man's son, Jiang Xiaoche's ability to bluff people was nothing to scoff at. A series of verbal cannons immediately bombarded Jiang Yingying with cuts and bruises. Fine. I agree. In the end, Jiang Yingying mustered up her courage and agreed to Jiang Xiaoche's conditions. All right. Do you have time tonight? I'll treat you to a meal. Jiang Xiaoche couldn't help but smile through the phone screen. You want to treat me to a meal? Of course, pretending to be a couple on the weekend is a big plan. Since we still have time now, Why don't we familiarize ourselves with each other first? Zhang Xiaoche said. After dinner, I'll take you shopping. After all, this is our first time pretending to be a couple. Neither of us have any experience. Moreover, if we go to the old street, we need to buy some clothes for you. Take it as a greeting gift. Zhang Xiaoche said calmly. Zhang Yingying was aghast. This man called Archer seemed to be a little too generous. However, it should be a good thing to have such a rich teammate. At least for now, that was how Zhang Yingying felt. Zhang Xiaoche's wealth and intelligence network were things that Zhang Yingying didn't have right now. Without these two factors, she wouldn't have enough power to resist Lotus Sunday. Just as she was at her wit's end, Zhang Xiaoche appeared. He was like a savior sent by the heavens to save him. So Archer, what exactly do you do? Zhang Yingying was curious about Archer's true identity. Actually, I'm a private detective, Zhang Xiaoche said. Although it was just nonsense, Zhang Xiaoche felt that his professional identity was reasonable. After all, he had been with Old Master Sun for so many years. The stock market and some other things were all based on his superb reasoning ability. Combined with Old Master Sun's words, he was able to do things perfectly. A detective. Zhang Yingying was a little surprised by this answer. Since he was a detective, he had to have a smart mind and a strong reasoning ability. To put it bluntly, a detective was someone who had a certain amount of experience and accumulated knowledge. As someone who pursued literature, Zhang Yingying's impression of Zhang Xiaoche instantly improved when she thought of his professional identity as a detective. This could be considered a rare stroke of luck for Zhang Xiaoche. Thursday, December 10th. When Wang Ling passed the school gate, he saw Death Heavenly Dao chatting with the old man with Pancake. With a monk's help, Death Heavenly Dao had successfully become the school guard captain at number 60 high school, and had now successfully become familiar with the old man at the gate. This old man with Pancake had been at the school gate for many years. He was a pitiful man who had borrowed money from loan sharks to raise money for his wife's medical expenses. Then, because of the loan sharks' violent collection, his wife's condition had rapidly deteriorated. The old man had already paid off his debt over the years, and repaid evil with good. Every day, he would give away half of his income to those who needed help. This was an old story in number 60 high school. It wasn't a secret. Death Heavenly Dao had learned about it not long after he took office. Thus, this morning, the old man had heard that the loan sharks who had violently collected money from him had exploded due to a gas leak. Coincidentally, it had also directly blown up the big guy who had come to violently collect money from him. Grandpa, is there anyone else you don't like? Just tell me directly, Death Heavenly Dao said as he ate his pancake. The old man wiped at his sweat. No. Even if there was, he wouldn't dare say it. That was too scary. But he felt that it was most likely a coincidence. After all, his situation wasn't a secret, and everyone knew about it. Furthermore, the gas leak had been an accident, and the police had already verified it, so there was no mistake. Thank you for your concern, little Wang. The old man spread out the pancake, his face full of helplessness. He knew that the name on this young man's ID card was Death Wang. It was just that he hadn't expected it to actually be so uncanny that he had died with the Grim Reaper. Grandpa, you're too kind. I just went back last night and made a little stick. I didn't expect something to really happen. Death Heavenly Dao laughed. Seeing that the two of them were chatting, Wang Ling took the initiative to walk over. For some reason, he also felt like eating pancakes today. Seeing that it was Wang Ling, the old man instantly spread out the pancake familiarly. Good morning, classmate Wang. Let's go with the old rules. 2 eggs with crispy noodle crumbs. This was Wang Ling's unique way of eating, and the old man was especially willing to make it for him. Because this way of eating was quite popular now. Generally, pancakes were filled with fried dough sticks, crispy biscuits and the like, but crispy noodle crumbs added a different kind of crispness to the pancake. Wang Ling was waiting for the pancake. At that moment, he saw a purple-eyed girl with long black hair get out of a black car. Her close-fitting black stockings and gothic dress were particularly eye-catching. Is this way of eating good? Then, Grandpa, please make me the same, the purple-eyed girl said with a cold expression. Wang Ling didn't look sideways, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw the conspicuous logo on the black car. That was the Jiugong family's logo. Chapter 1444. The symbol of the Jiugong family was a crow with an amethyst eye, which Wang Ling speculated might have something to do with the purple eyes that the Jiugong family inherited. Yin-yang eyes. Wang Ling sized up Jiugong's purple eyes out of the corner of his eye and instantly knew where they came from. This was a very rare type of eye. After all, this was Jiugong, who had made her name by exorcising demons and suppressing evil. This was simply a gift from the ancestral master. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. If only he could use his own abilities to make money. Unfortunately, the family rules were strict. This was the first time Wang Ling and Jiugong had met. But intuitively, Wang Ling felt that Jiugong wasn't a bad person. After all, foreigners who could accept the setting of crispy noodle snacks in crispy pancakes were actually quite rare. Jiugong stopped in front of the fruit jianbing stall, and behind her stood a female bodyguard in a suit and sunglasses. The female bodyguard, who had tattoos of the Jiugong family on her ankles and wrists, was looking worriedly at the fruit jianbing stall in front of her. "Miss, the food at this roadside stall isn't hygienic." "Humph. You won't get sick if you eat it. Back off." Jiugong gave the female bodyguard a cold look, and with one look, she obediently stepped back. The dignified eldest daughter of the Jiugong family indeed had a strong aura. Wang Ling immediately thought of Lotus Sundae, and realized the difference between the two. Although they were both eldest daughters, Lotus Sun had taken the route of being close to the people and had aimed to attract their attention. Jiugong, on the other hand, was different. She was an ice beauty with a strong aura that made people flinch. The old man didn't dare speak or ask, and just wanted to concentrate on making the jianbing in his hands. He didn't recognize this girl called Jiugong, but he knew that she was an eldest daughter with a strong aura. With her standing here, the other students didn't dare approach her easily. Since this was the first time he was doing business with this girl, the old man hesitated when he was putting in the paint. "Miss, do you want chili? Insanely spicy. Then do you want coriander?" "No." "Okay." Then the old man flipped the bottom of the jianbing with a spatula and poured the crispy noodle snacks he had prepared on it. Finally, he rolled the entire jianbing, wrapped it in oil-absorbing paper, and put a disposable plastic bag over it before handing it to Jiugong with both hands. "Miss, be careful, it's hot." The entire process took less than a minute. A minute of Chinese cuisine? Interesting. Jiugong carefully took it and stared at the pancake in her hand, lost in thought, and then took a tentative bite. The wonderful texture instantly invaded Jiugong's taste buds, causing her purple eyes to flash with a flash of light. "How's the taste?" Death Heavenly Axiom, who was wearing a school guard uniform, looked at Jiugong. "That's it. It's not as good as the octopus balls downstairs." Jiugong commented coldly before taking another big bite. Uncle Jianbing, Wang Ling and Death Heavenly Dao. Could it be that she was at Sundra? His mouth said it didn't taste good, but his body was very honest. "My bodyguard is right. Your stall is too small, and the plates are dirty. It's not very hygienic. Sorry for the trouble." The old man bowed helplessly. Contentedly eating the pancake in her hand, Ryoko Kwamiya snorted at the old man. "I just want to try something new, I won't buy it a second time." Then, she strolled slowly through the gate of number 60 high school. Like Jiang Yingying yesterday, she was here to register for the school today. Wang Ling chewed on his pancake as he walked unhurriedly behind Jiugong. As they approached the school building, Wang Ling heard Ryoko whisper to the female bodyguard next to her. "You, change into casual clothes and go to that pancake stall again." "Yes, Mississippi." The female bodyguard understood. "Are you going to smash it?" "I'll do it right away." "Smash what?" Jiugong panicked and almost shouted. "I'm asking you to buy me another 20. When you wear casual clothes, remember to cover up your tattoo, so you don't scare people." "So, this is compensation?" The female bodyguard smiled bitterly. She realized. This was her family's young miss compensating the old man just now. After all, when buying pancakes, a lot of the other students didn't dare approach him, and they interfered with his business. "Heh, compensation? Do you really think I'm doing charity?" "This is charity, charity," Ryoko Kwamiya emphasized in a low voice. "Yes, miss, you're right. Also, when the old man is done with his business, go and arrange a shop for him at the entrance of the school. I'll pay for it from my account." Jiugong nibbled on the pancake in her hand, her expression expressionless,
but the delicious blush on her cheeks hadn't faded. "Miss, it's too dirty, I'm cleaning up the city." After saying that, Ryoko Kwamiya snorted softly and walked toward the headmaster's office. Wang Ling watched Ryoko Kwamiya leave, and at the same time, he deeply admired his own crispy noodle snack's judgment rules. Sure enough, his guess had been right. People who liked to eat crispy noodle snacks couldn't be that bad. Ryoko Kwamiya wasn't a bad person, but with this kind of personality, it would be easy for others to offend her if they didn't understand her. At that moment, Wang Ling finished the last bite of his pancake and habitually licked his fingers as he thought to himself. Come to think of it, there really had been a lot of transfer students recently. Yesterday it was Jiang Yingying, and today it was Ryoko Kwamiya. But it looked like Kyuya Ryoko wasn't after him, which made him instantly feel a lot more at ease. Headmaster Chen and Audiobook had already been waiting in the headmaster's office for a long time. The Ryoko family settling in number 60 high was a big deal. As Headmaster Chen was naturally happy. This way, number 60 high would be in line with international standards. In the future, they could even use the Ryoko family's influence on Sun Island to carry out student exchange activities. This was the day that Ryoko Kwamiya would register at number 60 high, and Headmaster Chen would personally welcome her. It was just that Ryoko Kwamiya had requested that Audiobook receive her. At that moment, sensing Ryoko Kwamiya's aura approaching, Headmaster Chen patted Audiobook on the shoulder. "Brother Joie, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll excuse myself for a bit." "Don't worry, Lord Headmaster." Audiobook smiled politely, and then saw Headmaster Chen open a cabinet on the side and enter it. He made a bye-bye gesture at Audiobook, then swiftly disappeared. Audiobook sucked in a cold breath. He had actually set up a transmission array in a cabinet. That was quite sophisticated. As soon as Headmaster Chen left, Ryoko Kwamiya opened the door and walked in alone. She hadn't brought any other bodyguards with her. The only one who had followed her earlier had been sent to buy pancakes and fruit pancakes, and Ryoko had deliberately sent him away. As soon as she entered, Ryoko saw Audiobook and walked over with a smile on her face. "Hello, classmate Ryoko. I'm Audiobook." Unexpectedly, Ryoko slapped Audiobook's hand away with a paw. No need for a handshake. Audiobook didn't know what on earth had happened to cause Ryoko Kwamiya to look angry. At that moment, the girl glanced at the sofa on the side, and directly sat down as if she were the host. "How have I offended classmate Ryoko?" Audiobook was still puzzled. "Don't misunderstand, Mr. Joie. You didn't offend me." At that moment, Ryoko stared at Audiobook. "But the entire Ryoko family." Audiobook was blank. "Are you still playing dumb, Mr. Swindler?" Ryoko Kwamiya smiled mysteriously. "You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.